Astrological forecast for October 2024. Secrets unveiled in a world on edge. By Ambrosius Holloway. October 2024 brings celestial currents that ripple across the globe, carrying with them monumental shifts in power, diplomacy, and the veils of secrecy that shroud the corridors of influence. The heavens themselves seem to echo a call for transformation, with planetary ingressions illuminating the paths of nations, regions, and global organizations. The deeper we gaze into the cosmic fabric, the more we uncover an invitation to witness a pivotal month, rich with mystery and revelation. Mercury in Scorpio, the veil of secrets lifts. On October 13, 2024, at precisely 15:23 UTC, Mercury slips into the shadowy depths of Scorpio, casting its penetrating gaze on the world. This is no ordinary shift. It's as if a long-forgotten key has unlocked the door to secrets buried beneath layers of deception. Mercury, the planet of communication, inquiry, and intellect, finds itself in Scorpio's domain, a realm of darkness, power, and transformation. Under this influence, the pursuit of truth takes on a sharp, relentless edge. Whispers of hidden agendas, espionage, and covert operations fill the air, compelling nations and organizations to confront the shadows lurking behind their official facades. MENA region, diplomatic chess in the cradle of civilization. The ancient lands of the Middle East and North Africa, steeped in millennia of history, find themselves once more at the crossroads of fate. With Mercury's ingress into Scorpio, a tide of clandestine negotiations and diplomatic maneuvering surges across this historically pivotal region. Countries like Iran and Saudi Arabia, where empires once rose and fell, may now find themselves in the throes of behind-the-scenes diplomacy, wrestling for control over the region's most prized asset, oil. The black gold that has driven wars, alliances, and revolutions becomes the focus of hidden dialogues. Espionage, power plays, and strategic alliances swirl beneath the surface, their ripple effects poised to shake global markets and geopolitics alike. Western Europe, a new era of privacy and power. As the majestic cathedrals of France and the industrial might of Germany stand tall, their governments brace for a wave of revelations. Mercury in Scorpio casts a critical eye on issues of privacy and corporate integrity. The centuries-old ideals of liberty and justice, so deeply woven into the cultural fabric of Western Europe, come into question as concerns over data protection and financial secrecy rise to the forefront. Governments are poised to delve into hidden corners, investigating corruption and offshore financial dealings that threaten to destabilize the European Union's core principles. The ancient streets of Paris and Berlin may witness a new battle, one fought not with armies, but with information, secrets, and a quest for transparency. The United States, media scrutiny and political scandals unfold. In the land where skyscrapers pierce the sky and the torch of Lady Liberty stands as a beacon, Mercury in Scorpio ignites a wave of investigative fervor. The halls of power from Washington, D.C. to the nation's intelligence agencies shudder under the weight of scrutiny. The shadows that have long obscured the truth begin to lift, exposing previously hidden government activities. The CIA, NSA, and other intelligence entities may find themselves at the heart of media investigations, with scandals and revelations unfolding like the pages of a spy novel. Cybersecurity, surveillance, and the question of privacy dominate the public discourse as Americans grapple with the tension between national security and personal freedom. The United Nations, strategies in silence. As nations gather under the iconic blue flag of the United Nations, the discussions shift from the public eye to the secretive chambers of power. Mercury's ingress into Scorpio brings a strategic edge to peacekeeping efforts, particularly in regions like Syria and Ukraine, where conflict has scarred the land. Confidential talks and covert operations dominate the agenda, as diplomats and leaders work behind closed doors to craft solutions that balance the delicate scales of war and peace. Investigations into human rights abuses, once whispered in hallways, may now rise to the surface, revealing hidden atrocities and reshaping global policies. World Health Organization, a health crisis unfolds. In the midst of a rapidly evolving world, Mercury in Scorpio draws attention to the medical realm, focusing its unrelenting gaze on the World Health Organization. Investigations into pharmaceuticals, health practices, and the transparency of global health institutions may expose hidden truths about the handling of recent crises. Like a surgeon's scalpel, this transit cuts through the layers of bureaucracy and secrecy, unearthing data and research that could reshape health policies worldwide. In a world still healing from pandemics, the revelations that emerge may hold the key to future global health security. Venus in Sagittarius, a global awakening of adventure and diplomacy. As Venus glides into the bold and far-reaching sign of Sagittarius on October 17, 2024, at 15:28 UTC, the world is poised for a profound shift in energy. This is no ordinary transit. Venus, the planet of love, diplomacy, and values, joins forces with the boundless Sagittarian spirit of exploration, freedom, and philosophical reflection. The atmosphere buzzes with the promise of new horizons, both literal and metaphorical. Venus in Sagittarius opens the door to cultural exchanges, philosophical revelations, and an insatiable thirst for freedom in global relations. The world is ready to expand, not just through borders, but in the realm of ideas, ideals, and collaborations. Latin America, philosophical diplomacy in the land of passion. Across the vibrant cities and rich landscapes of Latin America, a wind of change begins to stir. From the bustling streets of São Paulo to the sweeping plains of the Pampas, Venus in Sagittarius breathes life into new cultural and diplomatic dialogues. Brazil and Argentina, nations with histories steeped in revolutionary fervor and artistic expression, stand at the forefront of this shift. In a region where the echoes of liberation movements still reverberate, this transit reignites the desire for cultural diplomacy and philosophical exchange. Governments and intellectual leaders in these countries may turn their gaze outward, forging new trade partnerships and initiating conversations about democracy, human rights, and environmental sustainability. The lush rainforests and mighty rivers seem to hum with the promise of renewal as these nations step into a new era of international cooperation. Educational programs flourish, cultural exchanges blossom, and Latin America's rich heritage finds new audiences across the globe. The fiery spirit of Sagittarius fans the flames of change, urging the region to embrace its role as a beacon of philosophical discourse and global partnership. South Asia, a spiritual renaissance in the heart of the Himalayas. High in the mountains of Nepal, where prayer flags flutter in the breeze and the ancient temples of India stand as timeless witnesses, Venus in Sagittarius casts its adventurous and philosophical light. South Asia, long a cradle of spiritual wisdom, may find itself once again at the center of global attention. With Venus's influence, this region becomes a magnet for seekers, pilgrims, and scholars drawn to its deep reservoirs of spiritual and philosophical traditions. The air fills with anticipation as discussions on spiritual values and philosophical teachings take on new urgency. International dialogues between India and Western nations flourish, sparking collaborations that merge the ancient with the modern. Tourists and scholars alike flood into the holy cities, seeking enlightenment in the teachings of the Buddha, the wisdom of the Vedas, or the quiet serenity of Himalayan monasteries. As Venus journeys through Sagittarius, the bonds between East and West strengthen, driven by a shared thirst for knowledge, exploration, and understanding. European Union, the open borders of thought and travel. The cobblestone streets of Paris, the academic halls of Oxford, and the sprawling boulevards of Berlin prepare for an influx of new voices, ideas, and perspectives. Venus in Sagittarius encourages a spirit of openness and curiosity within the European Union, where centuries-old traditions of learning and exploration meet the modern drive for progress and expansion. Discussions surrounding the future of the EU may take a bold turn, with leaders considering the inclusion of new member states or expanding trade agreements with Africa and Asia. Tourism, long a hallmark of Europe's allure, finds new life under this transit. As travel restrictions ease, eager travelers flock to Europe's museums, universities, and cultural landmarks. Foreign students, scholars, and creatives flood the continent, turning Europe's cities into vibrant melting pots of intellectual and artistic exchange. The idea of expansion no longer remains confined to geography. It's a call for an expansion of the mind, spirit, and collective global vision. International Monetary Fund, Philosophies of Freedom in Global Finance. As Venus in Sagittarius ignites a global desire for growth and exploration, the International Monetary Fund, IMF, is not immune to its influence. This planetary alignment encourages the IMF to rethink its approach to supporting developing nations, emphasizing financial freedom and cultural cooperation over rigid economic policies. The philosophical debates surrounding the future of global finance intensify as economic leaders gather to explore more equitable and innovative ways to foster international growth. Expect the IMF to promote initiatives that align with Sagittarian ideals, educational and cultural exchange programs that empower developing nations to thrive, not just economically, but intellectually. The language of finance becomes infused with optimism and the belief that through open dialogue and collaboration, new pathways to prosperity can emerge. World Trade Organization, Boundless Horizons in Global Commerce. The World Trade Organization, WTO, feels the far-reaching impact of Venus in Sagittarius, with a focus on expanding global trade relationships. Western nations look to forge new economic partnerships with emerging markets in Asia and Latin America, fueled by a renewed sense of cooperation and exploration. Borders seem to dissolve as cross-cultural collaborations flourish, driven by a shared belief in the power of global unity and free trade. This is a time of expansive growth as the WTO encourages nations to embrace the freedom of global commerce, laying the groundwork for economic resilience and innovation. Venus's influence urges the organization to consider new ways to bridge cultural divides through trade, fostering partnerships that transcend mere economic transactions and create lasting bonds between nations. UNESCO, Guardians of Global Heritage. In the realm of global culture and education, UNESCO stands as the torchbearer of Venus's Sagittarian energy. This is an ideal time for the organization to champion the preservation of cultural heritage, particularly indigenous wisdom and ancient philosophies that have shaped the world. With Venus in Sagittarius, the call to protect and promote these treasures grows louder, as the global community rallies to ensure that the past is not forgotten in the rush toward the future. UNESCO's initiatives during this period will likely focus on safeguarding the intangible, the philosophies, beliefs, and traditions that define humanity's cultural richness. Expect an increase in global efforts to preserve and celebrate ancient wisdom, as Venus in Sagittarius reminds us that true progress lies in honoring the knowledge of those who came before us. Mars in Scorpio, a world gripped by stealth, strategy, and power struggles. As the fierce and determined planet Mars takes residence in the dark, calculating waters of Scorpio throughout October 2024, the world braces for a storm of covert actions, decisive maneuvers, and power struggles that play out behind the scenes. Mars, already known for its bold, warrior-like nature, finds itself amplified in Scorpio, a sign synonymous with secrecy, long-term planning, and relentless pursuit of victory. This is not a transit for the faint-hearted. It's a cosmic chess game where every move is calculated, every action rooted in strategy. In the silence of diplomatic halls and the shadows of military operations, Mars in Scorpio works tirelessly, shaping the future of nations, economies, and power structure. Russia and Ukraine, a battle of shadows. On the war-torn plains of Eastern Europe, Mars in Scorpio looms like a dark cloud over the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. This is a region steeped in historical rivalries, where power has long been contested, from the days of imperial ambitions to the modern clash of nations. As Mars intensifies the tension, the war takes on new dimensions. Covert operations, cyber attacks, and strategic offensives ripple through both nations. It's a time of bold action, where decisions are made not just on battlefields, but in the shadows, where victory is pursued at any cost. The streets of Kyiv, the Kremlin's corridors, the eastern front lines, all feel the weight of Mars's influence. This is not just a physical war. It is a battle of wills, where the outcome could reshape the region's geopolitical landscape for decades. The whispers of hidden negotiations and bold military plans grow louder as both sides fight for dominance in a world watched by anxious allies and foes alike. China and the South China Sea, tides of power in the east. Far to the east, Mars in Scorpio turns its gaze to the South China Sea, a body of water that has seen countless historical battles and stands today as one of the most. The seas churn under the weight of rising tensions as China, emboldened by Mars's influence, asserts its dominance over these waters. Rich in natural, naval fleets quietly move into position and covert military strategies unfold in the background. In Beijing, in Washington, and across Southeast Asia, leaders make secret deals, conduct hidden negotiations, and execute plans that could shift the balance of power in the Pacific. The stakes are higher than ever, with the control of trade routes and energy resources hanging in the balance. Like a game of Go, where every piece matters, Mars in Scorpio demands calculated moves in this increasingly tense maritime chessboard. Global financial markets, hidden forces unleashed. Mars in Scorpio doesn't stop at warfare. It extends its shadowy reach into the financial heart of the world. Global markets, already volatile, feel the weight of this transit as powerful institutions and governments make decisive and often secretive financial moves. The oil-rich lands of Saudi Arabia, the energy sectors of Russia, and the cutting-edge tech hubs across the globe brace for major shifts. Industries such as oil, energy, and technology become the center of attention as Mars pushes nations to assert control over their natural resources, leading to major restructuring in the global economy. In Wall Street boardrooms, Moscow's financial district, and the bustling markets of Riyadh, investors and politicians alike feel the tension rising. The stock markets fluctuate with increasing volatility as hidden factors and behind-the-scenes deals come to light. The financial world, like a massive machine, adjusts to the unseen forces of Mars, with every shift creating ripples felt across continents. Africa's shifting power, the struggle for control. Across the vast and resource-rich continent of Africa, Mars in Scorpio stirs political unrest and leadership struggles in nations like South Africa and Nigeria. Here, the stakes are high, with industries related to mining and natural resources at the center of intense battles for control. Political figures acting from the shadows make covert moves to secure their dominance, and efforts to combat corruption grow more aggressive. In the streets of Johannesburg, the cities of Lagos, and the mining towns spread across the continent, power struggles take center stage. Mars's influence brings an urgency to leadership transitions as new political figures rise and old power structures are challenged. The continent's future is being shaped in secret meetings and under-the-table deals as leaders fight to control Africa's rich resources and its place in the global economy. IMF and World Bank, bold moves for a shifting world. The world's most powerful financial institutions, the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, find themselves in the grip of Mars's relentless energy. As struggling economies turn to these organizations for aid, Mars in Scorpio pushes for bold strategic moves. Debt restructuring plans and financial interventions become key talking points, particularly in regions like Latin America, Africa, and Eastern Europe. This is a time for assertive action, where global financial institutions are called upon to make tough decisions that will shape the future of economies in crisis. Behind closed doors, in meetings far from the public eye, financial leaders debate and decide the fate of nations. This is not a time for hesitation. Mars demands decisive moves with the goal of long-term stability and control over global economic systems. United Nations Security Council, the war room of the world. In the hallowed halls of the United Nations, where diplomacy and peacekeeping efforts are daily fare, Mars in Scorpio adds an intense undercurrent to proceedings. The Security Council, already dealing with pressing global conflicts, may see a surge in covert negotiations and strategic military planning, particularly concerning the hotbeds of Ukraine, the Middle East, and East Asia. As nations jockey for influence over international policies, sanctions, and military interventions, backdoor alliances and power plays become critical. The UNSC, like a master tactician, works quietly behind the scenes, shaping the future of global security. The stakes are higher than ever, with the future of international peace hanging in the balance. Slow-moving titans, Saturn and Uranus shape a global shift in October 2024. In the cosmic theater of 2024, the slow-moving outer planets, Saturn and Uranus, take center stage, casting long, transformative shadows over the world. These planetary giants, moving deliberately through the zodiac, have the power to reshape entire societies and economies. Saturn's journey through the ethereal waters of Pisces, paired with Uranus's revolutionary path through the earthy realms of Taurus, sets the stage for profound change. As they move, they touch on humanity's deepest values, spirituality, creativity, material resources, and call for a reckoning that will reverberate across nations and institutions. October 2024 is not a moment of quiet reflection, but a period of cosmic urgency, where ancient structures and beliefs are reimagined, reshaped, and reformed. Saturn in Pisces, restructuring faith and creativity. Since March 2023, Saturn has been navigating the dreamlike seas of Pisces, a sign known for its spirituality, compassion, and boundless imagination. Yet Saturn, the planet of discipline and structure, does not allow these Piscean qualities to float aimlessly. Instead, it demands accountability, reshaping how societies view spirituality, sacrifice, and creativity. In October 2024, this transit intensifies, urging the world to confront illusions and ground abstract ideals in reality. Saturn in Pisces is a call to turn dreams into action, to make spiritual and creative work more tangible, disciplined, and impactful. The sacred and the chaotic must now be contained within Saturn's strict boundaries, transforming lofty ideals into practical, lasting change. India, a spiritual renaissance under Saturn's watchful eye. In India, where spirituality is woven into the very fabric of daily life, Saturn in Pisces brings an era of spiritual reckoning. From the banks of the Ganges to the towering temples of Tamil Nadu, a transformation unfolds. Religious institutions, long seen as pillars of tradition, face increased scrutiny. The country, known for its spiritual leaders, from the teachings of Mahatma Gandhi to modern gurus like the Dalai Lama, now stands at the crossroads of reform. Transparency, ethics, and financial accountability take center stage as Saturn pushes for clearer structures within India's spiritual communities. Gone are the days of unquestioned faith. The sacred is now subject to rigorous examination. Religious leaders must demonstrate not only spiritual purity, but also social responsibility. Charitable acts, healthcare initiatives, and educational programs emerge as the new face of India's spiritual landscape. The reform is not just about faith, it's about action, as Saturn calls for the ancient wisdom of India to manifest in tangible, grounded ways that benefit society. Vatican City, a time of reckoning for the Catholic Church. In the heart of Vatican City, where centuries-old traditions whisper through the halls of St. Peter's Basilica, Saturn in Pisces calls for profound introspection. The Catholic Church, with its storied history, finds itself in the midst of a spiritual and moral reckoning. Scandals of the past, long buried under layers of ritual and dogma, rise to the surface, demanding accountability. Saturn's stern energy compels the church to restructure its hierarchy, bringing discipline to its leadership and addressing long-standing issues surrounding clerical responsibilities and the vow of. This is a period where the church must face its shadows and emerge with a renewed sense of purpose. Humanitarian efforts and social justice initiatives take on new urgency as the church seeks to reclaim its place as a moral leader in a rapidly changing world. Saturn's influence is not one of destruction, but of rebuilding, urging the Vatican to implement reforms that could redefine the Church's role in the modern era. The United States, healing a nation's soul. Across the Atlantic, the United States feels Saturn's influence most keenly in the realms of mental health and addiction. A country long plagued by a growing opioid crisis and mental health challenges, America now faces the need for a systemic overhaul. Saturn in Pisces brings a sense of discipline to healthcare reform, with an emphasis on addressing psychological well-being and addiction recovery with practical, compassionate solutions. From Hollywood's creative giants to the small-town artist, the American creative industry also falls under Saturn's gaze. The glamour of fame is tempered by responsibility, as filmmakers, musicians, and artists are called to consider the ethical implications of their work. As mental health services are expanded and addiction recovery programs restructured, Saturn pushes the U.S. toward a future where creativity and compassion go hand in hand with accountability. World Health Organization, a new approach to mental health. On a global scale, the World Health Organization, WHO, feels the deep pull of Saturn's journey through Pisces. Mental health, addiction recovery, and compassionate healthcare systems come to the forefront of international policy. Saturn's demand for structure and discipline translates into global campaigns aimed at improving mental health services, particularly in regions hardest hit by addiction and psychological suffering. In this period, expect groundbreaking reforms in global health policies, where traditional medicine is increasingly integrated with spiritual healing practices. Saturn's influence calls for tangible, real-world solutions to alleviate spiritual and psychological suffering, marking a pivotal moment for global healthcare as it seeks to balance the physical and the metaphysical in its approach. UNHCR Compassion Meets Action in the Refugee Crisis. The United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, UNHCR, tasked with addressing the needs of displaced populations, finds itself under Saturn's watchful eye. As millions of refugees face uncertain futures, Saturn in Pisces emphasizes the need for not just physical, but emotional and spiritual support. Refugee camps, often places of despair and displacement, are reimagined as spaces of healing. Under this influence, the UNHCR shifts its focus toward providing mental health services, emotional support, and spiritual care for those affected by war, poverty, and displacement. Saturn's demand for structure and compassion drives the organization to implement lasting reforms that prioritize the well-being of the world's most vulnerable. Uranus in Taurus, a revolution in the material world. While Saturn governs the spiritual and emotional realms, Uranus's journey through Taurus turns its revolutionary energy toward the material world. Taurus, a sign associated with stability, material wealth, and resources, is disrupted by Uranus's need for change. In October 2024, Uranus in Taurus brings upheavals in financial systems, agricultural practices, and environmental sustainability. Expect radical shifts in how nations handle material resources, with countries like Saudi Arabia and Russia taking center stage as they rethink their reliance on oil. The financial world, long defined by tradition, will be forced to adapt as Uranus challenges old structures and introduces innovative, often unexpected solutions. A world transformed, what lies ahead? As October 2024 unfolds, the slow but powerful movements of Saturn and Uranus demand change on every level. From the spiritual restructuring of India and the Catholic Church to the financial revolutions sparked by Uranus in Taurus, the world finds itself at a pivotal crossroads. What comes next will define the future of nations, institutions, and individuals alike. Uranus in Taurus, a revolutionary shift in finances, values, and global resources. As Uranus, the celestial harbinger of innovation and disruption, continues its relentless journey through the fixed sign of Taurus, the world stands on the precipice of radical transformation. Since 2018, this transit has shaken the very foundations of stability, challenging humanity to rethink its relationship with material resources, finances, and the environment. Taurus, traditionally a sign of security and preservation, now finds itself infused with Uranus's electric energy, sparking a revolution in agriculture, financial systems, and sustainability practices. The impact of Uranus in Taurus ripples across nations, industries, and institutions, reshaping the way we value, use, and protect our resources. Global financial markets, volatility and innovation at the crossroads. In the towering financial districts of New York, London, and Brussels, the air crackles with uncertainty. Uranus's unpredictable energy courses through the global financial systems, dismantling old norms and ushering in an era of innovation and volatility. The once seemingly unshakable stock markets in the United States, the United Kingdom, and the European Union now fluctuate under the weight of new technologies and decentralized currencies. Cryptocurrencies, once considered fringe financial instruments, now pose a direct challenge to traditional banking systems, and governments scramble to implement regulations and oversight. The streets of Wall Street, the City of London, and Frankfurt's financial heart hum with tension as regulators and innovators collide. The digital age of finance, driven by blockchain technology and decentralized economies, is here, demanding a new approach to global wealth. With Uranus pushing the envelope, financial institutions are forced to adapt or risk collapse, balancing the promise of inclusivity with the inherent instability of rapid change. The future of money is being rewritten in real time, with every innovation bringing both hope and disruption. China, a revolutionary approach to agriculture and resources. In the sprawling farmlands of China, where rice paddies stretch toward the horizon and technology melds with tradition, Uranus's influence in Taurus is reshaping the nation's agricultural practices. As the world's largest agricultural producer, China stands at the forefront of a farming revolution. From the bustling innovation hubs of Beijing to the quiet rural provinces, revolutionary changes are underway. Genetically modified crops, vertical farming, and AI-powered agricultural systems are no longer science fiction, but reality, transforming how China feeds its billion-strong population. Under Uranus's radical gaze, China is also pushing the boundaries of resource management. Sustainable practices and cutting-edge technologies are being developed to address the nation's growing need for food security and environmental preservation. This period marks a shift not just for China, but for global agriculture, as new methods and technologies born here set the stage for a sustainable future. The balance between tradition and innovation, nature and technology, becomes a delicate dance in the quest for environmental harmony. Middle East, the oil economy on the edge of transformation. Beneath the scorching desert sun of the Middle East, a new era dawns for the oil-rich nations of Saudi Arabia, Iraq, and Iran. These countries, long defined by their dominance in global oil production, now face the existential challenge of Uranus in Taurus. The world's slow but steady shift toward renewable energy sources places mounting pressure on these oil-dependent economies to diversify. In Riyadh, Baghdad, and Tehran, discussions that once centered around oil reserves now include solar fields, wind farms, and sustainable energy investments. Uranus in Taurus is driving these nations to reimagine their economic strategies, forcing them to adapt to a global economy that increasingly favors investments in renewable technologies grow as oil's reign as the world's dominant energy source slowly wanes. The once steadfast power of oil-producing nations is challenged by a future where alternative energy reigns supreme, and the Middle East begins its transformation from an oil giant to a renewable energy innovator. World Bank and IMF, innovating global financial stability. At the helm of global financial stability, institutions like the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, IMF, find themselves navigating uncharted waters under Uranus's disruptive influence. The traditional frameworks that once guided global economics are no longer sufficient. As digital currencies rise and economic inequality deepens, these institutions face unprecedented challenges. Uranus in Taurus demands bold innovation, and the World Bank and IMF must now lead the charge in reshaping how the world addresses financial inequality and resource management. Expect groundbreaking reforms aimed at promoting green economies, supporting emerging technologies, and confronting the disruptive effects of cryptocurrencies on the global financial system. These organizations, long the stewards of global economic order, are now tasked with balancing innovation with stability, addressing the need for financial inclusivity while ensuring sustainable development. Uranus's presence is a call to action, urging the world's financial leaders to rethink the very foundation of global wealth and sustainability. World Trade Organization, a new era of global cooperation. In the grand halls of the World Trade Organization, WTO, where trade agreements and economic policies are crafted, Uranus in Taurus sparks a wave of revolutionary change. This is a time for global cooperation on issues that go beyond mere commerce. Sustainable agriculture, food security, and environmental preservation become the core pillars of new international agreements. The WTO, traditionally focused on trade liberalization, now expands its scope to include the critical issues of resource management and climate change mitigation. Countries that once competed for dominance over material resources now find themselves at the negotiation table, working together to address the growing challenges of food production and environmental degradation. Uranus in Taurus emphasizes the need for innovative solutions and global solidarity as nations navigate a world where the old rules of trade are rapidly. Neptune in Pisces, a mystical awakening and the shadows of illusion. Since 2011, Neptune has been quietly moving through its home sign of Pisces, weaving a web of spiritual awakening and heightened empathy. But as it continues this cosmic journey until 2025, this transit also blurs the lines between reality and illusion, inviting humanity to explore the mystical while confronting the dangers of escapism. Neptune's energy dissolves boundaries, dissolving traditional structures and urging us to seek transcendence. Yet with that comes the risk of losing sight of what is grounded and true. The world, under Neptune's influence, is suspended between the desire for spiritual connection and the chaos of uncertainty. United States, media movements, and the mirage of truth. In the United States, Neptune's presence in Pisces has transformed the landscape of media and social movements into a kaleidoscope of shifting narratives. On one hand, there's a surge of idealism, with media outlets focusing more on themes of spirituality, empathy, and humanitarian causes. Movements for social justice, fighting for the rights of marginalized communities, gain momentum as collective consciousness awakens. Yet beneath this idealism lies a growing tension. Neptune, with its penchant for illusion, blurs the boundaries between fact and fiction. In the digital age, where every screen pulses with information, the line between truth and misinformation fades, creating a fog of confusion. As social movements gain strength, they also face challenges: unclear leadership, conflicting ideals, and a lack of direction. The streets of America, from bustling urban centers to small-town rallies, become stages for both collective hope and disillusionment, as the nation grapples with Neptune's dual gifts of empathy and bewilderment. Russia, the mystical tangle of religion and power. In Russia, Neptune's influence strikes at the heart of national identity, intertwining religious authority with political power. The towering spires of the Russian Orthodox Church, rich with centuries of history and devotion, cast long shadows over the political landscape. As Neptune dissolves boundaries, the Church may increasingly shape government discourse, blurring the distinction between spiritual leadership and state authority. This spiritual resurgence, while inspiring for many, raises questions. Are these movements toward divine truth or convenient propaganda? The Russian identity, long intertwined with its cultural and spiritual roots, is reimagined under Neptune's gaze. Art, music, and literature may take on new prominence, but so too might the temptation to craft a mythic, idealized version of the nation's story, masking underlying motives. The risk of delusion looms as Neptune's fog spreads over political narratives, leaving the Russian people to wonder where faith ends and manipulation begins. Middle East, religion's grip on the geopolitical chessboard. In the ancient lands of the Middle East, where religion has always been deeply embedded in the fabric of society, Neptune in Pisces deepens the spiritual discourse. In countries like Saudi Arabia and Iran, the entanglement of religion and state governance becomes more complex, as Neptune's influence heightens the mysticism surrounding spiritual leadership. The vast deserts and towering mosques stand as witnesses to centuries of faith, but now, as Neptune dissolves political and religious boundaries, questions of loyalty and power become ever more fluid. Regional alliances shift like the desert sands, with ideological struggles playing out not just on the battlefield, but in the sacred halls of religious institutions. Leaders who once seemed steadfast may find their loyalties questioned, as the blurred lines between spiritual authority and political power fuel both inspiration and conflict. Neptune's presence is felt in every prayer, every political move, as the region grapples with its own spiritual identity in the face of shifting geopolitics. United Nations idealism in a world of humanitarian crisis. In the grand halls of the United Nations, where global leaders convene to address the world's most pressing challenges, Neptune in Pisces aligns with the organization's mission of promoting peace and humanitarian causes. This transit encourages the UN to focus more deeply on spiritual and humanitarian initiatives, refugee protection, climate change action, global health. But Neptune's influence also brings the risk of lofty ideals lacking practical grounding. Diplomatic efforts blur with humanitarian goals, making it harder to distinguish between political motivations and genuine altruism. The UN's campaigns, while filled with compassion, may find themselves at odds with the realities on the ground. Neptune's energy swirls through every decision, inspiring grand visions, but also obscuring the logistical challenges that must be faced. As global crises intensify, the UN's ability to turn empathy into action is put to the test. World Health Organization: Holistic Healing in a Nebulous Age. The World Health Organization, WHO, is no stranger to the challenges posed by Neptune in Pisces. This planetary influence encourages a broader focus on holistic and spiritual health, pushing the WHO to explore mental health, alternative healing practices, and the psychological impacts of global crises. However, Neptune's shadow looms large. Confusion or misunderstandings about health protocols become more frequent, as the boundaries between science and spirituality blur. In a world where wellness trends and alternative therapies gain traction, the WHO must find clarity amidst the haze of misinformation. Neptune's presence inspires innovation in addressing mental health, but it also demands caution. The challenge lies in ensuring that the organization's public health messaging remains clear and grounded, even as the world seeks solace in both scientific and spiritual healing. Pluto in late Capricorn, the last chapter of power and transformation. As Pluto reaches the final degrees of Capricorn, a monumental era of transformation draws to its climax. Since 2008, Pluto, the planet of deep, often unsettling change, has been slowly dismantling the very foundations of global power, reshaping governments, corporations, and institutions alike. Now, in these final degrees before its entrance into Aquarius in late 2024, Pluto's energy intensifies, demanding the collapse of outdated systems and forcing humanity to confront entrenched authority and corruption. The cracks in long-standing structures are widening, paving the way for new forms of governance, leadership, and control. But before the dawn of Aquarius, the shadows of Capricorn must be fully reckoned with. United States, a reckoning for government and corporate power. In the United States, Pluto's final sweep through Capricorn promises a moment of reckoning for both the government and corporate titans. Washington, D.C., where power has been wielded for centuries, finds itself at a crossroads. This is not just a political shift, but a deep structural upheaval. The marble halls of Congress and the glass towers of Wall Street tremble under Pluto's relentless gaze. Investigations into corporate corruption dig deeper than ever, revealing secrets buried within the financial, technological, and energy sectors. In boardrooms and Senate hearings, the air is thick with a sense that the old ways of operating unchecked power, corporate monopolies, opaque political maneuvering can no longer stand. Pluto's influence pushes the U.S. toward political reform, demanding transparency in leadership. Corporate giants, once untouchable, face increased scrutiny over their ethical practices, forced to confront their role in perpetuating inequality. This is a transformative moment, one that could reshape not just policy, but the very nature of American power and governance. European Union, breaking down bureaucracy for a new future. Across the Atlantic, the European Union stands on the brink of profound change. In the heart of Brussels, where bureaucratic structures have long governed the continent's future, Pluto's energy challenges the status quo. The EU, a symbol of political unity and economic power, now faces the hard truths of inequality and division within its member states. Countries like Germany and France may push for deeper integration, seeking to strengthen the union, while others reconsider their alliances, creating ripples of tension across the continent. Pluto's final degrees in Capricorn expose the underlying fissures within the EU's economic and political systems. Economic reforms aimed at addressing inequality, redistributing power, and reshaping the union's governance are not just possibilities, they are necessities. These reforms are not easy, and they will force the EU to confront difficult truths. But out of this struggle comes the potential for a stronger, more unified Europe. China, consolidating power amid global shifts. In China, Pluto's transformative energy takes on an air of quiet intensity. As the nation continues to assert its global dominance, Pluto in late Capricorn signals an era of power consolidation. From Beijing's Forbidden City to the modern skyscrapers of Shanghai, the atmosphere is one of control, of maintaining China's position on the world stage. Yet, beneath the surface, hidden power struggles may be unfolding. Corruption within the ranks of government and the Communist Party could come to light, challenging the seemingly unshakable grip of Chinese leadership. Economically, Pluto's influence suggests a period of restructuring. China's policies surrounding trade, technology, and industrial power may undergo significant shifts as the country seeks to adapt to global economic changes. The challenge lies in balancing this restructuring with the need to maintain control over its vast and complex system of governance. What emerges from this period could redefine China's role in the global order. IMF and World Bank, financial systems at a crossroads. For global financial institutions like the International Monetary Fund, IMF, and World Bank, Pluto in Capricorn brings a clear message: reform is inevitable. These organizations, long at the center of the global economic system, face increasing pressure to address economic inequality and resource allocation. The traditional financial models they have relied upon must evolve as Pluto pushes for greater transparency and accountability in handling international debt and economic governance. Pluto's transformative influence could lead to a reimagining of how global wealth is distributed, with a focus on fairness and equity. The old dynamics of financial power are no longer sustainable, and these institutions must adapt or risk becoming relics of a bygone era. NATO, power dynamics and military strategy in flux. For NATO, Pluto's final degrees in Capricorn bring to light the internal power dynamics that have long shaped its military strategies and global security policies. As the organization confronts rising tensions in Eastern Europe and the Middle East, Pluto forces NATO to reevaluate its leadership and decision-making processes. Internal struggles over defense budgets, military intervention, and geopolitical alliances come to the forefront, highlighting the need for structural reforms within the organization. Pluto's influence could lead to a transformation in how NATO operates, pushing it to adapt to an ever-evolving global landscape. As the world's power dynamics shift, NATO must evolve or risk becoming out of touch with the realities of modern warfare and international diplomacy. October 2024 retrogrades a global reawakening of power, resources, and spiritual insight. October 2024 ushers in a rare cosmic alignment as three major planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, enter retrograde, signaling a profound period of global introspection. The retrograde movement, often seen as a celestial pause, calls for reflection, transformation, and reevaluation on a grand scale. Each of these planetary giants holds the power to reshape economies, redefine spiritual beliefs, and upend entrenched power structures. The world, under this triple retrograde influence, feels the weight of change bearing down upon it as old systems crack open and new possibilities arise. Let's explore how this powerful astrological phenomenon will impact specific regions and institutions as the world braces for a seismic shift. Uranus retrograde in Taurus, shaking the foundations of finance, security, and resources. Uranus, the planet of innovation and disruption, is often compared to a lightning bolt, striking swiftly and unexpectedly, leaving everything changed in its wake. But when Uranus turns retrograde, as it does in October 2024, while still in the steady, earthy sign of Taurus, its electric energy shifts inward. This is a time when the world collectively re-examines its deepest values concerning security, finance, and material resources. Taurus, the sign linked to stability, agriculture, and wealth, now finds its foundations shaken. As countries and economies around the globe reflect on their current practices, the path forward becomes uncertain, yet brimming with potential. Global financial markets, volatility in the economic giants. In the skyscraper-filled metropolises of New York, London, and Shanghai, the pulse of the world's financial markets beats unevenly. Uranus retrograde in Taurus sweeps through the heart of these global financial centers, stirring uncertainty and upheaval. The United States, the United Kingdom, and China find themselves at the epicenter of this cosmic disruption. Stock markets, long considered the bedrock of economic stability, suddenly lurch with unpredictable volatility as investors scramble to adapt to new realities. The advent of digital currencies, once hailed as the future of global finance, now faces reversals. Financial institutions and governments alike reassess the long-term viability of these innovations, casting doubt on their staying power. Amidst the chaos, whispers of a market correction ripple through trading floors, and the world watches closely, knowing that every decision in this retrograde phase could reshape financial landscapes for decades to come. Agriculture and resource management, innovation born from necessity. From the fertile lands of Brazil to the sprawling farmlands of India and the arid regions of Africa, Uranus retrograde turns its gaze on agriculture, a sector deeply tied to Taurus's earthy domain. This retrograde period brings unexpected challenges to the world's breadbaskets. Farmers, who for generations relied on traditional methods and crops, now face the pressing need to innovate or risk falling behind in an increasingly unpredictable climate. New technologies and alternative farming practices emerge out of necessity. Governments, recognizing the vulnerability of their agricultural sectors, begin reevaluating land ownership policies and resource management strategies. Discussions surrounding food security and land use intensify as leaders in Brazil, India, and African nations grapple with how to balance innovation with sustainability. What was once familiar in agriculture is no longer certain, and in the void left by Uranus's disruption, new paths are forged. European Union, reassessing green energy dreams. In the heart of Europe, From the historic streets of Berlin to the bustling avenues of Paris, the European Union has long stood as a leader in environmental sustainability. But as Uranus retrograde in Taurus takes hold, even the most visionary green energy initiatives face scrutiny. Germany and France, leading the charge in climate action, find themselves questioning the feasibility of current strategies. What once seemed like a clear path toward sustainability now reveals hidden inefficiencies and obstacles. Governments across the EU reconsider their approaches to green energy, forced to adapt to unforeseen challenges. New technologies that disrupt traditional energy sectors rise to the forefront, offering hope, but also stirring debate. This period of reevaluation pushes Europe's leaders to think creatively as they confront the realities of implementing long-term solutions in an increasingly unstable world. World Trade Organization, navigating the storm of resource management. As Uranus retrograde sends ripples through global trade, the World Trade Organization, WTO, finds itself in a pivotal position. The trade agreements that have governed agricultural products and raw materials for decades begin to falter. Countries reassessing their own resource management strategies trigger sudden changes in tariffs, export bans, and import regulations. The world's economic balance feels fragile, teetering as nations make abrupt policy changes to secure their own interests. The WTO must navigate these turbulent waters, called upon to mediate the growing instability. Behind closed doors, diplomats negotiate frantically to avoid long-term economic disruptions. This retrograde phase will test the organization's resilience as it seeks to stabilize the world's trade systems amidst an atmosphere of unpredictability. International Monetary Fund, addressing financial instability and new innovations. For the International Monetary Fund, IMF, Uranus retrograde represents a time of immense pressure and challenge. Emerging economies, rocked by sudden financial instability, turn to the IMF for assistance. But this is no ordinary economic crisis. This retrograde phase forces the IMF to confront the rapidly shifting norms of global finance. The rise of financial technologies and innovations, once heralded as game changers, now come under intense scrutiny. Amidst growing demands for loan restructuring and financial assistance, the IMF must spearhead critical discussions on integrating new financial technologies while maintaining economic stability. The world watches closely as the IMF balances on a tightrope, knowing that the decisions made now will either propel emerging economies forward or deepen their instability. Neptune retrograde in Pisces, the unveiling of truths in spirituality, media, and collective ideals. As Neptune, the enigmatic ruler of dreams, spirituality, and illusion, continues its retrograde journey through Pisces throughout October 2024, the world stands at a pivotal moment of revelation. Neptune, in its home sign of Pisces, is known for casting a veil over reality, encouraging idealism and mysticism. However, during its retrograde phase, that veil begins to lift, exposing hidden truths and shattering illusions that have long shaped our understanding of spirituality, media, and collective ideals. In this time, the world is called to confront the fantasies it has clung to, as disillusionment gives way to clarity, and the pursuit of truth becomes inescapable. United States, media, misinformation, and the awakening of collective consciousness. In the heart of the United States, where the media has long been a powerful force shaping public opinion and collective ideals, Neptune retrograde in Pisces casts a harsh light on the shadowy corners of mass communication. The sprawling newsrooms of New York, the digital empires of Silicon Valley, and the echo chambers of social media platforms tremble under this celestial scrutiny. As the fog of confusion lifts, the American public becomes increasingly aware of the biases, manipulations, and hidden agendas woven into the narratives they've been consuming for years. This period marks a dramatic shift in the media landscape, where misinformation, propaganda, and the distortion of facts are exposed in sharp relief. What was once presented as truth now appears fractured, and the public demands reform. Calls for media transparency, ethical reporting, and greater responsibility in shaping collective consciousness grow louder. In the backdrop of Neptune's retrograde energy, the United States enters a new phase of media accountability, forever altering how information is disseminated and consumed. Russia, disillusionment in the union of church and state. In Russia, where the grand domes of Orthodox churches rise against the skyline and religion is intricately tied to national identity, Neptune retrograde in Pisces brings a sobering reckoning. For years, religious authority and state power have blended, creating a potent force that has shaped the Russian narrative both internally and externally. But now, as Neptune's fog dissipates, cracks begin to appear in this union. The Russian people may start questioning the motives behind the religious rhetoric used by the government to fortify nationalistic ideals. Disillusionment with religious figures who have aligned too closely with political agendas grows, and the once sacred trust in spiritual authority begins to erode. This moment of clarity forces the government to reevaluate its use of spiritual ideals as tools for control, sparking potential reforms that could separate church from state in ways unseen in modern Russia. What follows is a period of internal tension as Russia grapples with the loss of its unified spiritual and political narrative. Middle East, the role of religion in power and governance unveiled. In the ancient lands of the Middle East, where religion and governance have been intertwined for centuries, Neptune retrograde in Pisces stirs deep within the political and spiritual landscapes of countries like the mosques and palaces that have long symbolized the union of spiritual authority and political power, find themselves at the center of public scrutiny. Hidden truths about the use of religious rhetoric to justify political actions emerge, forcing these nations to confront the delicate balance between faith and governance. As the people begin to awaken to the ways in which spiritual ideals have been manipulated for political gain, calls for reform grow louder. Neptune's retrograde energy strips away the illusions that have shielded these regimes from critique, leading to increased demands for transparency and a clearer separation between religion and state. This moment also affects international diplomacy, as the world reevaluates its perceptions of these nations' religious influence on governance and foreign policy. UNESCO, guardians of spiritual and cultural integrity. At the global level, UNESCO finds itself uniquely positioned to play a critical role during Neptune's retrograde journey. The organization, dedicated to preserving cultural and spiritual heritage, becomes a beacon of clarity in a world grappling with disillusionment. With communities around the globe facing spiritual crises and questioning long-held beliefs, UNESCO amplifies its efforts to protect cultural identities and spiritual narratives. During this retrograde period, expect UNESCO to focus on media integrity and the responsible portrayal of spiritual and cultural histories. As the world uncovers hidden truths, the organization's work will emphasize the importance of truth in storytelling, ensuring that cultural and spiritual legacies are preserved with accuracy, and through this, UNESCO stands as a pillar of stability, guiding the global community through the turbulence of disillusionment. World Health Organization, a new focus on mental and spiritual health. Under Neptune's retrograde influence, the World Health Organization, WHO, turns its attention to the often overlooked aspects of mental health and spiritual well-being. As the psychological impacts of global crises, ranging from pandemics to climate change, become more evident, this period brings clarity to the gaps in how mental health is addressed on a global scale. The world awakens to the need for more holistic approaches to public health, integrating spiritual and psychological healing in ways that have long been neglected. Revelations about addiction, mental illness, and the spiritual toll of modern crises push the WHO to advocate for comprehensive reforms in mental health care. New initiatives aimed at improving global mental health strategies are born from this period of reflection, offering hope for a future where mental and spiritual well-being are given. The Neptune's retrograde phase acts as a catalyst for these changes, making it clear that the mind, body, and spirit are inextricably linked. Sun's ingress into Scorpio, a season of transformation, power, and hidden truths. On October 22, 2024, as the sun crosses the threshold into Scorpio at 1814 UTC, a powerful shift begins to ripple through the world. The transition from Libra's balanced diplomacy to Scorpio's intense, secretive depths marks the dawn of a season where transformation reigns supreme. Scorpio is the sign of rebirth, power dynamics, and hidden truths. Its energy invites us to peel back the layers of the superficial and confront what lies beneath. The sun's ingress into this fixed water sign ignites a period of profound global and personal metamorphosis, touching on healthcare, labor, politics, and financial systems, as the structures that once seemed immovable begin to shift, crack, and reform. Exact ingress in Greece Scorpio, a moment of transformation. As the sun moves from the final degree of Libra into the first degree of Scorpio, the shift is palpable. On October 21st, the sun still sits at 29 degrees Libra, clinging to the ideals of balance and negotiation. But as it crosses into Scorpio on October 22nd, the air thickens with the promise of transformation. This is the moment where diplomacy fades and intensity rises, where hidden truths surface and power struggles are brought to light. Scorpio, the sign associated with control, secrets, and financial undercurrents, demands attention to what has been concealed for too long. In mundane astrology, Scorpio governs collective shifts in power, financial restructuring, and the revelation of buried secrets. As the sun settles into 00 degrees Scorpio, global events will echo this theme. What has been hidden in shadow will begin to emerge, and systems of control will be challenged and reshaped. Sun in the 6th house, a focus on health, labor, and public service. The sun's placement in the 6th house of the ingress chart brings its transformative energy into the realms of work, health, and public service. The 6th house governs the everyday, our work environments, healthcare systems, and the people who serve the public good. With the sun's powerful Scorpio energy illuminating this house, we can expect to see a surge of focus on healthcare reform, labor rights, and public service sectors across the globe. The push for transformation in these areas will not be gentle. It will be deep, intense, and necessary. Governments and institutions will feel the pressure to adapt as outdated policies and inefficient systems come under scrutiny. This is a time for structural change, where public health initiatives, labor reforms, and work-life balance take center stage. The sun's journey through Scorpio in the 6th house signals a turning point, one where the hidden cracks in healthcare and labor systems are exposed, forcing leaders to rebuild these foundations from the ground up. Global impact on healthcare and labor, a world in flux. Across the globe, the sun's ingress into Scorpio will catalyze shifts in healthcare and labor sectors, bringing to light the systemic weaknesses that have long gone unaddressed. United States, healthcare reform and labor rights. In the United States, the Scorpio sun will cast its transformative light on healthcare and labor rights, setting the stage for significant reforms. The healthcare system, already a point of political contention, will face deeper scrutiny, particularly around the rights and conditions of healthcare workers. Hospitals, overburdened and understaffed, may become the focal point of intense debates as public health resources and their management come into question. Expect political discourse to heat up around government-funded health initiatives and labor protections for those on the front lines. This period could lead to policy changes that prioritize worker rights, addressing the need for fair wages, better working conditions, and the mental health of healthcare professionals. Scorpio's energy will demand that the U.S. confront the flaws within its system and begin the process of healing and regeneration. European Union, a call for labor and healthcare reforms. In the heart of Europe, where countries like Germany, France, and Italy stand at the forefront of healthcare and labor debates, the sun's ingress into Scorpio stirs discussions about reform. Labor regulations, healthcare benefits, and the structure of public health systems will come under intense examination as the European Union grapples with the ongoing challenges of labor shortages and healthcare inefficiencies. Scorpio's influence will push for standardized policies across member states as the EU seeks to address the imbalances within its healthcare and labor sectors. Expect fierce debates over worker protections, healthcare accessibility, and the need for reforms that can sustain Europe's aging population. The energy of transformation will not be kind, it will be demanding, forcing leaders to confront the uncomfortable truths about what needs to change.
Latin America, revolutionizing public health and labor laws. In Latin America, countries like Brazil and Argentina will feel the sun's Scorpio energy in their public health and labor sectors. Governments may push for bold initiatives aimed at overhauling public health systems, with a focus on improving access to care and reallocating resources where they are needed most. The agricultural sector, a cornerstone of Latin American economies, may also see shifts in labor laws designed to protect workers, improve wages, and address the physical toll of essential labor. Scorpio's transformative influence will demand that these countries confront the deep-rooted inequalities within their healthcare and labor systems. This could lead to sweeping reforms aimed at improving the lives of workers in public service and agriculture, while also restructuring how public health services are delivered to the masses. Themes of secrecy, power, and transformation, the sun's dark descent into Scorpio. As the sun slips into the shadowy realm of Scorpio, a season of profound intensity and hidden currents begins to sweep across the globe. This is no ordinary celestial shift. Scorpio governs the secretive corridors of power, where agendas unfold far from the public eye, and transformation occurs deep beneath the surface. With Pluto's slow, relentless journey through Capricorn already forcing a re-evaluation of global systems, the sun in Scorpio amplifies this energy, casting a piercing light on the darkest corners of political maneuvering, financial restructuring, and control over the world's most valuable resources. This is a time of seismic shifts, where hidden truths emerge, power is consolidated, and nations grapple with the forces that shape their futures. Political shifts and power struggles, secrets in the halls of power. As the sun burns through Scorpio's waters, the political arenas of the world become battlegrounds of secrecy and struggle. In North America and Western Europe, political instability is no longer whispered in back rooms. It spills into the open, revealing fractures in leadership and the simmering tensions that have long been buried beneath polished exteriors. Governments engage in covert negotiations, consolidating power through unseen hands and quiet deals that will redefine the balance of authority. Behind closed doors, secret meetings are held, decisions made, and alliances formed, all while the public remains in the dark, only glimpsing the aftershocks. In Russia and China, where power is concentrated in tight, heavily controlled circles, the stakes are even higher. Scorpio's energy fans the flames of internal conflicts within ruling parties, and as the sun digs into these power structures, quiet rebellions and hidden struggles for dominance may bubble to the surface. Expect the unexpected as political strategies shift and evolve in the face of Scorpio's relentless demand for control. Financial reforms and economic restructuring, a global rebalancing. In the world's financial centers, from the towering skyscrapers of Wall Street to the historic streets of London and the economic heart of the European Union, Scorpio's influence takes hold, forcing a reckoning. Global wealth inequality, long festering beneath layers of bureaucracy and corporate influence, can no longer be ignored. Scorpio demands transformation, and financial systems are primed for deep restructuring. The United States, United Kingdom, and European Union will face mounting pressure to address the widening chasm between rich and poor, as well as the unchecked power that corporations wield over government policies. But as reforms take shape, expect secrecy to shroud the process. Behind the scenes, negotiations over debt restructuring, international trade agreements, and financial aid packages will unfold, reshaping the global economy in ways that won't become fully clear until the ink has dried. For those watching closely, the signs of a new financial order will be there, hidden in the details of contracts and policies that shift wealth and power in transformative ways.
Taurus Ascendant, the global quest for stability amid disruption. As Taurus ascends over the horizon, the world's gaze shifts toward a desire for stability, security, and comfort. Taurus, an earth sign ruled by Venus, embodies the longing for material comfort, financial solidity, and peace. Its influence suggests a period where nations and institutions focus on maintaining a steady grip on resources and wealth. But there's a crack in this facade. Uranus, the planet of sudden change and innovation, lingers in Taurus, creating an undercurrent of volatility. This combination brings a paradox. While the world craves calm and security, it must confront unexpected shifts that disrupt the foundations of global economies and resource management. The Taurus Ascendant sets the tone for how the world presents itself, a steady exterior masking the tremors beneath the surface. As the sun enters Scorpio, the tension intensifies. The deep, transformative energy of Scorpio clashes with Taurus's unyielding need for stability, creating a global atmosphere charged with the challenge of balancing old systems with the demand for new solutions. The management of financial resources, material assets, and economic structures becomes the battleground. Global impact on resources and finances, a world on edge. United States and global markets, stability meets volatility. In the financial nerve centers of New York and beyond, the steadying influence of Taurus is at war with Uranus's drive for innovation. The US, a key driver of global economic trends, finds itself in the eye of a financial storm. Stock markets, traditionally symbols of wealth and stability, become sites of unpredictable shifts. Currency values fluctuate like waves on a restless sea, and trade agreements that once seemed unshakable are suddenly in question. Banks and investment firms scramble to adapt to these rapid changes, while industries tied to material wealth, real estate, agriculture, energy, brace for impact. The desire for financial security is strong, but Uranus forces innovation, compelling the United States to rethink its economic strategies. This is a time when bold reforms may emerge, but the path to stability is fraught with uncertainty, leaving investors and policymakers alike on edge. European Union, balancing stability with innovation. In the grand halls of Berlin and Paris, where the economies of Germany and France anchor the European Union, Taurus's focus on material wealth and financial security is palpable. These nations, pillars of European stability, must now navigate economic fluctuations that threaten to destabilize their carefully maintained systems. Inflation concerns rise, trade relations shift, and the need for economic security dominates discussions across the continent. Yet, the disruptive presence of Uranus in Taurus complicates these efforts. Just when strategies for stabilization seem clear, unexpected developments, technological innovations in finance or changes in global supply chains emerge, throwing even the most secure plans into disarray. The European Union faces a delicate balancing act, trying to maintain its economic strength while adapting to the unpredictable forces of change that Uranus brings. China, securing resources in a changing world. In China, the world's largest consumer of raw materials and energy, Taurus's rising influence emphasizes resource management. The government's ongoing efforts to secure long-term stability in agriculture, energy, and natural resources are now challenged by the unpredictable hand of Uranus. The quest for control over vital resources is fraught with uncertainty as global markets shift and new demands arise. China may be forced to rethink its traditional approaches, embracing flexibility and innovation to adapt. This could lead to new trade partnerships, investments in alternative energy sources, or unexpected shifts in how the country manages its vast resource reserves. In this climate, China's ability to pivot quickly will determine its success in securing the resources needed to sustain its growing economy. Organizational impact, mediating global disruption. World Trade Organization, navigating the shifting sands of trade. The World Trade Organization, WTO, finds itself at the heart of global economic discussions, where the focus on stability is paramount. Taurus rising underscores the need for steady trade relations, with nations seeking to secure their financial futures through stable agreements. Yet, Uranus's presence ensures that nothing stays settled for long. Sudden shifts in trade policies, tariffs, or regulations emerge, forcing the WTO to constantly adapt. The tension between maintaining economic security and responding to rapid, unforeseen changes will dominate global trade negotiations. The WTO's role as mediator becomes even more crucial as it works to strike a balance between tradition and the necessity of innovation in an increasingly unpredictable market. International Monetary Fund, stabilizing economies in turbulent times. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, faces a daunting challenge under Taurus's influence, tasked with maintaining financial stability in a world rocked by economic uncertainty. Regions facing financial crises or debt burdens turn to the IMF for solutions, seeking the steady progress that Taurus promises. But Uranus's unpredictable energy complicates these efforts. Financial aid packages, debt restructuring, and global economic policies, once considered stable, are now subject to sudden disruptions. The IMF may be pushed to adopt more innovative solutions to stabilize economies, even as it grapples with the volatility of the global markets. The road ahead is uncertain, but the IMF's ability to balance steady progress with necessary innovation will define its success during this period. Capricorn Midheaven, the global struggle for leadership and authority in a transforming world. As the clock strikes 1814 UTC, the Midheaven finds itself firmly in Capricorn, a sign that stands as a beacon of governance, leadership, and the intricate workings of power. Capricorn, ruled by the stern, unyielding Saturn, speaks to the need for structure, discipline, and long-term vision. This is a time when the world looks to its leaders for stability and direction, yet the backdrop is anything but steady. With the sun simultaneously entering the transformative waters of Scorpio, a deeper, darker undercurrent begins to stir beneath the surface. This is not just a time for leadership. It is a time when hidden power struggles, corruption, and the need for profound change force their way into the public eye. Governments and institutions around the world, drawn into this cosmic dance, must now confront their deepest challenges. Capricorn's determination to preserve order collides with Scorpio's demand for truth, forcing a reckoning between the desire for stability and the unavoidable necessity of transformation. Leadership, once seen as an unshakable pillar, now quakes under the weight of public expectation and hidden turmoil. United States, a call for transparency amid political shifts. In the political heart of the United States, the Capricorn midheaven shines a spotlight on governance and authority structures. It is a time when the public, weary of hidden agendas and entrenched power, demands accountability. As Capricorn emphasizes the need for long-term stability, the American people begin to question how their leaders plan to maintain order amidst the storm of political scandals and corruption that Scorpio's energy may bring to light. From Washington, D.C.'s historic Capitol building to the crowded streets of New York, debates rage over governmental reforms. Leaders are forced to navigate a tense environment where the stakes are higher than ever. This period may see significant shifts in the political landscape as hidden power dynamics come to the surface and calls for transparency and reform grow louder. Scorpio's influence ensures that nothing can remain hidden for long. Russia and China, the battle for power and control. In the corridors of power in Moscow and Beijing, the Capricorn midheaven signals a time of intense focus on leadership and the consolidation of authority. For Russia and China, nations where power is often concentrated in the hands of a few, this is a critical period. Capricorn's influence demands order, but Scorpio's presence in the background stirs the waters of hidden rivalries and secret negotiations. In Russia, power dynamics that have been buried deep within the political hierarchy may start to unravel, leading to public calls for reform or even challenges to leadership. Meanwhile, in China, the government must walk a delicate line. seeking to maintain centralized control while managing domestic and international pressures. The demands of trade, security, and the global perception of Chinese authority weigh heavily on the leadership as they navigate a landscape where stability is vital, but change is inevitable. European Union, the quest for stability amid institutional reforms. Across the European Union, where nations like Germany, France, and Italy play key roles in shaping the continent's future, the Capricorn midheaven underscores the need for governance that can weather the storms of bureaucracy and political tension. As the EU grapples with internal debates over leadership and power distribution, Capricorn's call for stability clashes with the hidden tensions that Scorpio brings to the surface. Member states may be forced to address uncomfortable truths about how power is shared within the Union, leading to discussions of leadership, accountability, and institutional reforms. The presence of Scorpio ensures that underlying conflicts or disagreements between countries will no longer be swept under the rug. This is a time for deep reflection and change, as the future direction of the EU hangs in the balance. United Nations, a time for leadership and global re-evaluation. The United Nations, often viewed as the world's moral compass, now finds itself under the watchful gaze of Capricorn at the midheaven. This is a time for the organization to re-evaluate its role in global governance. Capricorn's energy calls for strong leadership and stable governance, but Scorpio's transformative influence suggests that the UN may need to confront hidden conflicts and power struggles among its member nations. As global security, humanitarian efforts, and international law come under scrutiny, the UN may be called upon to reform its own structures. The balance of power within the organization could shift, leading to changes in how authority is distributed and how the UN operates on the global stage. This period could mark a turning point in the organization's history, one where it must adapt to a world that is rapidly evolving and increasingly complex. World Health Organization, strengthening governance in the face of health crises. For the World Health Organization, the Capricorn midheaven represents a call to solidify leadership and governance structures in the wake of global health challenges. Public health, long a central focus of the WHO, now takes on even greater importance as Capricorn demands stability and Scorpio reveals inefficiencies, hidden health crises, and potential corruption within the system. This period may lead to significant reforms in how the WHO operates, particularly in its ability to respond to emerging health threats. Capricorn's energy emphasizes the need for long-term planning and effective leadership, while Scorpio pushes the organization to confront uncomfortable truths about the gaps in global healthcare. The WHO will likely focus on ensuring that its governance structures are robust enough to meet the demands of an uncertain future. Tension between Taurus ascendant and Scorpio sun, stability versus transformation. The dynamic between the Taurus ascendant and the sun's ingress into Scorpio creates a global push-pull between the desire for material stability, Taurus, and the need for profound transformation, Scorpio. Taurus rising emphasizes the importance of security, comfort, and steady progress, while Scorpio demands change, digging beneath the surface to confront hidden issues and drive transformation. This tension will manifest globally as societies attempt to maintain stability in the face of necessary reforms and shifts in power dynamics. The moon in Cancer, a rising tide of emotional sensitivity and global security concerns. On October 22, 2024, the moon enters its sacred home of Cancer, a sign where its energy is not just comfortable, but profoundly powerful. In the realm of mundane astrology, the moon symbolizes the collective mood, the heartbeat of public emotions, and the instinctual responses of nations to unfolding events. With the moon in Cancer, the global atmosphere is infused with heightened emotional sensitivity, an almost palpable concern for security, home, and the protection of what is most cherished. This is a time when the world will feel an undeniable pull toward nurturing, preservation, and safeguarding. Whether on an individual scale, within families, or in the grand corridors of government, the instinct to protect becomes paramount. It is a time when the past clings closely to the present, evoking a sense of nostalgia and a deep longing to hold on to the values and traditions that define cultural identity. But beneath this blanket of comfort, Uranus retrograde in Taurus shakes the foundations of stability, particularly in matters of financial security and resource management. The moon, nestled in the second house of material resources, casts a spotlight on these concerns, making them emotionally charged and triggering protective reactions across the globe. Moon in Cancer, the collective focus on security. With the moon in Cancer, emotions run high. This is a placement where the collective soul seeks refuge in familiar comforts, home, family, and the reassuring rhythms of everyday life. There's a deep, instinctual desire to protect, to ensure that what is valuable remains safe from harm. But it's not just personal security at stake. Nations, too, will feel this pull toward preservation, with a heightened focus on safeguarding resources, both material and cultural. Governments will prioritize domestic stability and national security, responding to the emotional climate with policies designed to shield their people from the unsettling forces of change. The global atmosphere will be heavy with concern, especially as economic uncertainties rise under the influence of Uranus in Taurus. The tension between maintaining financial stability and confronting the disruptions of the modern world will be palpable. Global impact on security and emotional stability, a world on edge. United States protecting domestic security and financial stability. In the United States, the moon in Cancer casts a protective shadow over concerns of domestic security and economic stability. The collective mood will be one of heightened sensitivity as citizens focus intensely on their financial well-being. With the moon residing in the second house, public anxieties will center around personal and national resources, economic policies related to inflation, taxation, and income inequality will ignite strong emotional reactions. From the rolling farmlands of the Midwest to the bustling financial centers of New York, Americans will demand greater efforts from the government to safeguard their livelihoods. Protective measures may take shape through government interventions aimed at stabilizing financial markets or providing relief to struggling households. The emotional landscape of the nation will be defined by a need for security amidst the growing strain of economic uncertainty. European Union defending national identity and economic resources. Across the European Union, the moon's Cancerian influence stirs deep feelings of national identity and the need to protect domestic industries. In countries like Germany, France, and Italy, where cultural heritage and economic strength are interwoven, the moon's energy will amplify public concerns about resource protection and economic stability. As nations grapple with trade disruptions and energy crises, the emotional response will be fierce. Governments across Europe may find themselves reinforcing policies designed to safeguard national wealth and preserve cultural values. The public's attachment to tradition will be strong, and any threats to economic stability, particularly regarding energy resources, will be met with heightened emotional resistance. The streets of Paris and Berlin may become stages for protests as citizens demand stronger protections for what they hold dear. China, guarding domestic stability and economic security. In China, the moon's placement in Cancer brings an intense focus on maintaining domestic stability and ensuring economic security. The Chinese government, known for its meticulous planning and long-term strategies, may intensify its efforts to shield the nation's economy from external threats. As global markets fluctuate under the influence of Uranus retrograde, China's leadership will likely adopt a more defensive posture in trade negotiations, prioritizing the protection of financial reserves and ensuring the resilience of domestic industries. Emotional investment in the economy will be high as the Chinese public looks to its government for assurance in the face of global challenges. National confidence in the stability of the economy will become a critical issue, with leaders working tirelessly to protect China's financial systems from the disruptive forces at play. Organizational impact, global institutions on high alert. World Bank and IMF safeguarding financial stability. For global financial institutions like the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, the moon's placement in Cancer within the second house signals an intense focus on securing financial stability across vulnerable economies. As countries face mounting economic challenges, many will turn to these institutions for support, seeking loan restructuring and financial aid to weather the storm. The emotional weight of economic instability will push these organizations to act with urgency. Leaders of the World Bank and IMF will emphasize the need for protecting fragile economies from further shocks, balancing short-term relief with long-term strategies for global financial stability. It will be a time of heightened emotional investment as these institutions work to preserve the world's economic equilibrium. United Nations focus on refugees and displaced populations. The United Nations, particularly its refugee and humanitarian organizations, will feel the emotional pull of the moon in Cancer as it turns its attention to those displaced by conflict and economic hardship. As the global community grapples with migration crises, the UN's efforts will center around providing security and stability for refugees in need of shelter and protection. Public sensitivity to these issues will be high, with nations feeling a greater sense of responsibility to address the needs of displaced populations. The moon's influence will heighten global empathy, prompting humanitarian efforts to ensure that those without homes are cared for and that their dignity is preserved. Moon in the second house, a global surge in emotional attachment to wealth and resources. As the moon enters the second house, its placement casts a powerful spell over the world's collective consciousness, drawing all eyes to the matter of material security. In this house, where wealth, possessions, and financial stability reign supreme, the moon's presence amplifies an emotional investment that runs deep. The second house is not merely about dollars and cents. It is about values, survival, and the emotional weight we attach to the things we hold dear. Now, with the moon ruling over this domain, individuals and nations alike will find themselves fiercely protective of their financial futures, their resources, and the things they deem essential to their well-being. It is a time when the slightest shift in economic winds can send waves of anxiety through populations, where the pulse of public sentiment rises and falls with stock market fluctuations, trade agreements, and government policies. The moon in Cancer, especially in the second house, imbues the financial landscape with an emotional charge, heightening our attachment to the systems that support our material security and urging us to safeguard what we hold most valuable. Global impact on financial and economic systems, a collective response to financial uncertainty. United States, the emotional heartbeat of economic policy. In the United States, the moon in Cancer sitting in the second house places the nation's financial pulse at the forefront of public sentiment. The collective mood grows more sensitive, more reactive, as issues like the cost of living, inflation, and access to resources become emotionally charged. Across the country, from Wall Street to small-town Main Street, people feel a rising concern over their financial futures. Expect heightened debates over taxation, social safety nets, and economic reforms. As government officials scramble to implement policies that stabilize the economy, whether through stimulus packages or reforms to financial regulations, the public's emotional response will be swift and intense. The desire for protection of financial security will overshadow nearly every political decision, as Americans demand stronger measures to secure their wealth and well-being in the face of an uncertain economic climate. European Union, guarding wealth and resources with emotional ferocity. Across the European Union, the moon's influence in the second house stirs strong emotions around resource management and economic solidarity. In nations like Germany, France, and Italy, where economic strength is deeply tied to national identity, the public will grow increasingly protective of their resources. There will be intense emotional investment in ensuring the stability of domestic industries and securing the union's wealth from external threats. This period could see heated debates over resource sharing agreements, particularly concerning energy supplies, as countries strive to balance the need for solidarity with a rising instinct to protect their own national interests. Expect protective measures to gain traction as governments respond to the public's deep-seated desire to preserve their economic security in a rapidly shifting global landscape. Middle East, the battle to protect oil wealth and national security. In the oil-rich landscapes of the Middle East, where nations like Saudi Arabia, Iraq, and Iran hold the keys to the world's most coveted resource, the moon's placement in the second house heightens emotional attachment to oil and its role in national security. Here, oil is not just a resource, it is the lifeblood of economic stability and global influence. As global oil prices fluctuate and trade agreements shift, expect heightened emotional reactions from both governments and the public. Protective measures will be taken to safeguard this vital resource, with nations becoming increasingly defensive against external disruptions. The stakes are high, as oil remains central to these countries' economic futures, and any perceived threat to their wealth will be met with swift, calculated responses. Organizational impact. Global institutions strive to secure stability. International Energy Agency, IEA, protecting the flow of global energy. The International Energy Agency, tasked with managing global energy resources, will feel the weight of the moon in Cancer's influence as it focuses on securing energy supplies for the world. The emotional sensitivity surrounding energy security will drive the IEA to prioritize initiatives that stabilize energy markets, ensuring that disruptions in resource distribution are minimized. Expect a heightened focus on long-term energy agreements, particularly as nations become more protective of their energy supplies. The IEA will be called upon to navigate the delicate balance between ensuring global energy security and addressing the emotional concerns of nations anxious to safeguard their resources in the face of an unpredictable future. World Trade Organization, WTO, navigating the storm of trade tensions. For the World Trade Organization, the moon in the second house signals an emotionally charged period where nations grow increasingly protective of their material assets and trade policies. With countries becoming more defensive over their wealth and resources, the WTO may face mounting pressure to mediate trade disputes and prevent conflicts over tariffs and trade regulations. The emotional investment in protecting national economies will make negotiations more fraught as countries seek to secure their interests while maintaining stable international trade agreements. The WTO will play a critical role in ensuring that the global trade system remains intact, even as nations react emotionally to perceived threats to their material security. Connection with Uranus retrograde in Taurus, a perfect storm of financial disruption. The moon in Cancer's intense focus on emotional security in the second house aligns with the disruptive forces of Uranus retrograde in Taurus. Taurus, a sign that rules material wealth and land, is already under strain as Uranus's retrograde motion shakes traditional financial systems, land ownership, and resource management. The moon's emotional sensitivity amplifies the public's anxieties, making every fluctuation in the global economy feel like a personal threat. The unpredictable shifts in how wealth is managed will trigger protective instincts as individuals and nations alike react to the disruptions caused by Uranus retrograde. This period of heightened emotional response to financial matters will be marked by a collective scramble to secure material stability in a world that feels increasingly uncertain. An emotional reckoning, the world's attachment to wealth and security. As the moon takes its place in the second house on October 22, 2024, the world finds itself in the grip of deep emotional investment in wealth, resources, and financial security. From the United States to the European Union, from the oil fields of the Middle East to the negotiating tables of the World Trade Organization, the collective mood is one of protection and preservation. Yet, with Uranus retrograde in Taurus, these efforts to safeguard wealth will be tested by disruptions and uncertainty. It is a time when the things we hold most dear, our material assets, our financial security, feel precarious, and the emotional stakes are higher than ever. The question remains, can we secure our wealth in the face of change, or will the tides of disruption force us to rethink our attachment to the material world? Jupiter in Gemini, the expansive power of communication and intellectual growth. As the Sun slips into Scorpio on October 22, 2024, a different cosmic force surges to the forefront. Jupiter, the planet of expansion and growth, stands at 21 degrees Gemini. This placement heralds a moment of powerful intellectual exploration and rapid communication, where the exchange of ideas becomes the lifeblood of progress. In mundane astrology, Jupiter's role is to push boundaries and invite opportunity, while Gemini, ruled by Mercury, governs communication, technology, and intellectual discourse. Together, these energies form a dynamic force, igniting a global era where knowledge flows faster than ever, shaping public opinion, societal values, and technological advancements. This alignment between Jupiter and Gemini is not a quiet whisper. It is a roaring wind of ideas, intellectual curiosity, and media engagement. However, within this tide of information lies the challenge of discernment. Gemini, with its quicksilver energy, can sometimes spread superficiality, amplifying misinformation alongside truth. As Jupiter in Gemini broadens the channels of global communication, societies must learn to navigate this influx with care, balancing the excitement of expansion with the responsibility of maintaining clarity. Jupiter in Gemini, intellectual expansion and the power of ideas. Jupiter in Gemini magnifies the power of the spoken and written word, enhancing global networks of communication and intellectual exchange. It is a time when societies focus on education, media, and technology, where knowledge becomes both the currency and the battleground. In this placement, the flow of ideas is not just encouraged, but propelled at lightning speed, spreading across borders and platforms. Imagine the bustling cafes of Paris, the skyscrapers of New York, and the tech hubs of Seoul, all connected by an invisible web of thought and innovation. Jupiter in Gemini fuels these connections, offering opportunities for intellectual collaboration and media engagement like never before. However, with this growth comes the challenge of filtering truth from noise. The airwaves are crowded, and the information landscape can become overwhelming, leaving societies grappling with the task of discerning what truly matters as amid the cacophony. Global impact on communication, media, and technology, a world awash in ideas. United States, media giants, and the battle for information. In the United States, Jupiter's presence in Gemini will likely set the stage for tremendous growth in the media, communication, and technology sectors. As home to Silicon Valley and some of the world's most powerful tech companies, the U.S. will witness innovation at the intersection of social media, digital platforms, and communication technologies. New ideas will flow rapidly, fueling debates over freedom of speech, media accountability, and the power of tech companies to shape public discourse. In the shadow of Jupiter's influence, discussions around misinformation will rise to the forefront. Expect intense debates over how online platforms regulate content, as the nation grapples with the delicate balance between protecting free speech and curbing the spread of harmful information. From Washington to the campuses of tech startups, the tension between innovation and regulation will simmer. European Union, expanding the horizons of education and knowledge. Across the European Union, Jupiter's intellectual energy will drive a focus on education, digital learning, and the free exchange of knowledge. In cities like Berlin and Paris, the emphasis will be on expanding educational systems, promoting cross-border intellectual collaboration, and investing in the future of digital communication technologies. The EU may become a beacon for knowledge-sharing initiatives, where research and cultural exchange become central to its identity. Universities and research institutions across the continent will likely embrace new digital tools, expanding their reach and fostering greater collaboration. Yet this growth will not come without its challenges. Debates around misinformation, fake news, and media regulation will intensify as the EU strives to protect the integrity of information in an increasingly digital world. Asia, innovation, economic growth, and the race to lead in technology. In Asia, the dynamism of Jupiter in Gemini will be felt most acutely in economic growth and technological innovation. Countries like China, Japan, and South Korea will experience a surge in sectors tied to communication, trade, and digital technologies. As these nations expand their influence in global markets, their ability to innovate in areas such as consumer electronics, digital infrastructure, and communication technologies will only accelerate. China, already a powerhouse in global technology, may see its tech exports and communication sectors grow even stronger, with the world looking to its advancements in AI, telecommunications, and digital platforms. Meanwhile, Japan and South Korea will lead the charge in consumer electronics and cutting-edge digital services, further cementing their roles as key players in the global economy. Trade agreements and new partnerships with other world powers will likely follow, boosting the economic engines of these countries even further. Jupiter's expansive energy, intellectual growth in the public and private spheres. Depending on the exact location and time of the Sun's ingress into Scorpio, Jupiter will either fall into the 1st or 12th house, each placement carrying its own weight in how this intellectual expansion manifests. In the 1st house, Jupiter's energy bursts forth into the public sphere, encouraging active, vocal engagement with new ideas, public discourse, and media platforms. It is a time for societies to assert their intellectual growth outwardly, showcasing advancements and innovations on the world stage. Conversely, if Jupiter lands in the 12th house, the focus shifts inward. Here, the expansive energy stimulates hidden intellectual concerns, encouraging reflection on personal beliefs, philosophical ideas, and the deeper values shaping public discourse. It becomes a time of internal expansion, where media and communication still play pivotal roles, but are directed toward introspection and the reevaluation of collective ideals. Jupiter in the 1st or 12th house, the tension between public expression and hidden reflection. As the Sun makes its ingress into Scorpio on October 22, 2024, Jupiter, positioned at 21 degrees Gemini, stands on a precipice, ready to shape how societies communicate, think, and reflect. Whether Jupiter falls into the 1st or 12th house depends on the specific alignment of the ingress chart, but either placement holds the promise of powerful transformation. The 1st house invites outward, public expression, while the 12th house beckons us inward, into the depths of reflection and hidden truths. Each path offers a unique manifestation of Jupiter's expansive intellectual energy, leaving societies at a critical crossroads, to shout their ideas boldly to the world or to contemplate, question, and uncover what lies beneath. Jupiter in the 1st house, a global surge of intellectual expression. If Jupiter lands in the 1st house, expect a vibrant explosion of public discourse and intellectual curiosity. Countries will openly engage in global conversations, projecting forward-thinking policies that encourage education, media expansion, and technological innovation. Picture the world's major cities, New York, London, Tokyo, buzzing with ideas, debates, and collaboration. Governments and organizations will embrace this moment to foster growth, pushing forward policies that promote knowledge sharing and communication. Education systems may see rapid advancement, with new technologies enhancing learning across borders. Public discourse will become not only inclusive, but also optimistic, as leaders seek solutions to global problems through dialogue and intellectual exchange. Jupiter in the 12th house, peering into the shadows of knowledge. If Jupiter instead finds its home in the 12th house, its energy takes a different form. Here, it does not loudly announce its presence to the world. Instead, it moves like a tide beneath the surface, urging societies to reflect on hidden truths, philosophical beliefs, and media manipulation. In this introspective space, countries and organizations will be driven to explore how information is controlled, hidden, or manipulated, and to confront the darker side of media and technology. The 12th house placement suggests that governments and corporations may have to reckon with long-buried secrets related to how information has been shaped, filtered, or suppressed. Hidden truths may come to light, forcing institutions to address disinformation and the ethics of media control. Global impact of Jupiter in the 12th house, the unveiling of hidden realities. United States, a reckoning over media transparency. Should Jupiter land in the 12th house for the US, the nation may face a dramatic reckoning regarding media transparency. Imagine a wave of revelations, sudden disclosures about the control of information by powerful media conglomerates or the government itself. The public's demand for honesty and accountability will be palpable, with investigations into media bias and the role of social media algorithms shaping public belief systems. The nation could find itself embroiled in debates about the ethics of information dissemination. Behind the scenes, powerful figures may be forced to address uncomfortable truths as citizens push for greater clarity and fairness in the media landscape. This period may expose the hidden mechanisms behind how information has been filtered to the public, sparking a nationwide conversation about truth, bias, and power. Russia, state-controlled media under scrutiny. In Russia, Jupiter's placement in the 12th house could crack open the tightly controlled world of state-run media. As revelations about censorship and propaganda emerge, expect intense debates within Russia's government and public institutions. Hidden aspects of media control may come to light, fueling philosophical reflection on the tension between state power and the growing demand for freedom of expression. This could be a transformative moment for Russia's media landscape as citizens begin to question the narratives that have long shaped their worldview. Behind the scenes, the government may quietly grapple with the implications of loosening its grip on information while trying to maintain stability. Economic growth and technological expansion in Asia, a new era of digital innovation. Jupiter in Gemini brings an undeniable boost to the communication and technology sectors, particularly in Asia. Nations like China, Japan, and South Korea, already recognized as global leaders in technology and innovation, will experience a surge in economic growth driven by advancements in telecommunications, trade, and digital services. This is a moment of rapid expansion, where ideas move at the speed of light, and the world watches as Asia takes center stage in shaping the future of digital infrastructure. China, a surge in tech innovation and global influence. In China, Jupiter in Gemini signals a monumental leap forward in technological exports and communication innovation. The nation, already a global leader in areas like 5G networks and artificial intelligence, may expand its influence even further, cementing its status as a major player in the digital world. Expect significant growth in trade relations, particularly as China strengthens its ties with other tech-driven economies through communication services and technology transfers. The streets of Beijing and Shanghai could buzz with the hum of innovation as China pushes forward in its quest to dominate global technology markets. Japan and South Korea, a digital renaissance in consumer electronics. For Japan and South Korea, this period marks a renaissance in consumer electronics, digital media, and trade. As nations with a history of technological excellence, they will see further growth in industries like semiconductors, telecommunications, and digital services. Trade agreements with global powers like the US and the EU may deepen, creating opportunities for collaboration and bolstering their economies. These two countries will find themselves at the forefront of global digital innovation, solidifying their place as technological leaders in a rapidly evolving world. Organizational impact of Jupiter in Gemini, steering global communication. World Trade Organization, WTO, facilitating the future of digital trade. With Jupiter's expansive energy in Gemini influencing global trade, the WTO will play a pivotal role in shaping the future of communication, technology, and intellectual property rights. This period may bring a focus on digital trade agreements and the flow of information across borders as nations seek to capitalize on the growing communication and technology industries. Expect the WTO to mediate trade disputes in these sectors, ensuring that technological innovations can be shared while balancing intellectual property concerns. International Telecommunications Union (ITU), expanding global connectivity. The ITU will find itself at the center of global efforts to enhance digital infrastructure. With Jupiter in Gemini, the organization's focus will be on improving internet access, mobile networks, and satellite communication systems, particularly in developing nations. This period may see a push to ensure that communication technologies reach the most underserved regions, bridging the digital divide and promoting equitable access across the globe. Saturn retrograde in Pisces, reshaping the spiritual and humanitarian world. As Saturn, the planet of discipline, structure, and accountability, moves retrograde at 14 degrees Pisces, a profound shift begins to ripple through the spiritual and humanitarian landscapes. Saturn's usual focus on order and responsibility takes on an ethereal quality in Pisces, a sign deeply associated with compassion, creativity, and the collective unconscious. Here, Saturn demands a reckoning, a careful review of how societies and institutions handle these abstract, idealistic concepts. The retrograde motion signals a global pause, a time for deep reflection. Spiritual, charitable, and artistic structures that once seemed untouchable are now thrust into the spotlight, scrutinized for their effectiveness in serving the collective good. How well are they living up to their promises of compassion and care? Are they disciplined enough to make a lasting impact? The world must confront these questions, and Saturn will not allow them to be ignored. Saturn retrograde in Pisces, a call to restructure compassion. As the world stands on the threshold of this powerful transit, the need for spiritual and humanitarian institutions to reform becomes undeniable. Pisces, ruled by Neptune, is a sign of limitless empathy, a dreamscape where boundaries blur. But Saturn demands boundaries. It demands frameworks, discipline, and accountability. It's a clash between the ideal and the real, between lofty aspirations and the hard truth of implementation. Institutions tied to spirituality, art, and humanitarian efforts must now undergo a transformative process. This is no time for nebulous concepts. This is a time for concrete action. Saturn retrograde pushes for the creation of systems that can sustain compassionate ideals, making them tangible and effective in the real world. Saturn in the 11th or 10th house, restructuring societal and public responsibility. Depending on Saturn's placement in the ingress chart, its retrograde influence will take different forms. In the 11th house, the focus shifts to collective organizations and social groups. In the 10th house, the emphasis is on government and leadership. But in both cases, the theme remains the same. Restructuring is inevitable. Saturn in the 11th house, reimagining humanitarian organizations. Should Saturn fall into the 11th house, the world's attention will be drawn toward collective efforts, humanitarian organizations, social groups, and charitable institutions. This placement urges a reevaluation of how these bodies operate, pushing for greater efficiency, structure, and accountability. Charitable organizations, from global NGOs to local community efforts, will face scrutiny. Are they really serving the people they aim to help? Are they sustainable? Imagine the halls of these organizations buzzing with activity as leaders scramble to implement long-term strategies. Poverty, mental health, and spiritual well-being become the core issues, and society demands more disciplined approaches to solving them. Gone are the days of loose frameworks. Saturn calls for sustainable, structured solutions. Saturn in the 10th house, governments and public institutions under pressure. If Saturn finds itself in the 10th house, the focus shifts to governments and leadership. Public institutions will face intense scrutiny as they are forced to reevaluate their approaches to spirituality, mental health, and compassionate governance. In capitals across the world, from Washington, D.C. to Berlin to Riyadh, leaders will feel the pressure to reform, to integrate humanitarian and spiritual values into public policy. This is a period of public reckoning. Governments will have to balance the need for long-term strategies with the demand for immediate, compassionate solutions. Mental health systems, social welfare programs, and spiritual leadership will all be placed under the microscope, and reforms will be inevitable. Global impact, spiritual and humanitarian institutions in transition. India, the restructuring of religious and spiritual institutions. In India, where spirituality is deeply intertwined with daily life and governance, Saturn retrograde in Pisces heralds a period of reflection and transformation for religious institutions. The great temples, ashrams, and spiritual leaders of the nation will find themselves under increased scrutiny. Are these institutions truly addressing the needs of the people, or are they mired in tradition without purpose? Public calls for greater transparency, accountability, and ethical practices will grow louder. Imagine the bustling streets of Varanasi or the tranquil ashrams of Rishikesh, places where spirituality is woven into the very fabric of society, now facing the pressure to adapt. This period may also see reforms in how spiritual tourism is regulated, with a renewed emphasis on sustainability and ethical practices. United States, mental health and social welfare systems in focus. Across the United States, Saturn's retrograde in Pisces shines a spotlight on the mental health and social welfare systems. Public institutions will be called to account for the gaps and failings in their approaches to mental health care. The current systems, often fragmented and underfunded, will face intense scrutiny as society demands reforms that incorporate spiritual and compassionate approaches into treatment. Nonprofits and humanitarian organizations will also face pressure to become more transparent and accountable. Picture the bustling offices of major humanitarian groups in New York or Washington, D.C., their leaders grappling with the need for change, adapting to new societal demands for openness and effectiveness. Middle East, spiritual leadership and political influence under the microscope. In the Middle East, particularly in countries like Iran and Saudi Arabia, Saturn's retrograde will bring spiritual leadership into focus. The intertwining of religion and politics has long been a feature of governance in these nations, but now there will be a push to separate the two. Public and international pressure may lead to discussions about how religious leaders engage in public discourse and political decision-making. Humanitarian organizations operating in conflict zones will also be scrutinized. Their effectiveness and transparency will be questioned, forcing a re-evaluation of strategies to better serve vulnerable populations amid ongoing turmoil. Organizational impact, reforming global humanitarian efforts. United Nations, UN, rethinking humanitarian structures. The United Nations, as a global humanitarian leader, will feel the full force of Saturn's retrograde in Pisces. This is a period where long-term planning becomes essential, where sustainable strategies must be adopted to address global crises. The world will demand more accountability from the UN, particularly in how it distributes aid and manages humanitarian efforts. Leaders within the UN will need to restructure their approach, ensuring that compassion and spiritual values are woven into the fabric of their policies. This is not just about responding to immediate crises, it's about creating a foundation for the future. World Health Organization, WHO, integrating compassionate care. The World Health Organization, often at the forefront of global health initiatives, will be called to reform its approach to mental health and spiritual well-being. Saturn retrograde in Pisces highlights the need for a more holistic, compassionate approach to healthcare. Expect new initiatives that prioritize mental health, integrate spiritual wellness, and respond to the emotional toll of global health crises. In Geneva, where the WHO's headquarters stands as a beacon of global health, the call for reform will echo through its halls. Leaders will need to ensure that health systems around the world are equipped to address not only physical illness, but also the mental and spiritual health of the global population. Uranus retrograde in Taurus, a shaking of foundations in economic and material stability. In the stillness of 26° Taurus, Uranus, the harbinger of upheaval, lies retrograde, waiting to stir the very foundations of global systems. Known for innovation, sudden change, and disruption, Uranus takes on an introspective force in its retrograde phase. Taurus, the sign of material wealth, agriculture, and the earth itself, feels the pressure acutely. Where Taurus once symbolized stability, Uranus now demands transformation. The ground beneath our feet, once firm, begins to shift. This period marks a critical moment where societies must confront their reliance on outdated systems of wealth and resource management. Economies tied to agriculture and natural resources brace for impact, as external pressures like climate change, technological advancements, and market volatility rise to the surface. The world stands on the brink of rethinking its relationship with material values, forced to innovate or crumble beneath the weight of inertia. Economic shifts, Uranus retrograde's disruptive energy unfolds. With Taurus rising as the ingress ascendant, Uranus's disruptive energy in the sign of the bull becomes even more potent. The themes of wealth, land, and resources dominate the global conversation. Yet this is no gradual change. Uranus pushes for sudden, revolutionary shifts. In finance, agriculture, and energy, nations will need to adapt or face collapse, as the retrograde pulls them into a period of reflection, reform, and perhaps even rebellion against the old ways. Global impact, disruptions in economic and resource management, Latin America, economic volatility, and the struggle for resilience. In the sprawling farmlands of Brazil and the vast pampas of Argentina, the effects of Uranus retrograde in Taurus will be felt deeply. Latin America, with its economies tightly bound to agriculture and natural resources, stands on the edge of volatility. Shifts in global trade markets, along with the fluctuating availability of essential resources, could throw countries into sudden economic turmoil. The soy fields and cattle ranches, once symbols of stability, may no longer provide the same assurance. Brazil, Argentina, and their neighbors will face a stark choice: continue down the familiar path or innovate for survival. Governments may be forced to adopt sustainable agricultural practices, diversify exports, and rethink their reliance on volatile markets. The push toward long-term sustainability will not be optional, but necessary as external market forces leave them vulnerable. Latin America, a region shaped by natural wealth, now finds itself at a crossroads. The call for resilience echoes through its cities and countrysides as the old economic models begin to buckle under the pressure of change. European Union, financial reforms, and sustainability in a changing world. Across the European Union, particularly in economic powerhouses like Germany and France, Uranus retrograde in Taurus signals a wave of financial reforms tied to sustainability. The Green Revolution, long simmering beneath the surface, will now take center stage. Traditional financial systems, deeply entrenched in fossil fuels and extractive industries, will be challenged by public demand for more responsible stewardship of the earth. Germany, with its deep commitment to environmental innovation, may lead the charge toward integrating green technologies into the national economy. France, too, will embrace circular economies, pushing for renewable energy solutions that align with their environmental goals. Uranus demands that the old systems adapt to a new reality, a reality where climate change and sustainability are no longer distant concerns but immediate priorities. As the winds of change blow across Europe, the continent's financial systems must evolve. The road ahead will be marked by both progress and resistance, as nations navigate the challenges of transforming their economies while maintaining stability in an uncertain world. Middle East, resource management, and the end of oil's reign. In the sun-drenched deserts of the Middle East, where oil has reigned supreme for generations, Uranus retrograde in Taurus brings the harsh reality that the age of oil may be waning. For nations like Saudi Arabia and Iran, the shifting tides of global energy markets will demand a dramatic reevaluation of resource management. As the world turns toward more sustainable energy sources, the region's reliance on oil exports will come under immense pressure. The oil fields, once symbols of untold wealth and power, now face an uncertain future. Governments in the region will be forced to innovate, perhaps investing in renewable energy sources or technological advancements that can diversify their economies. The disruptions to global oil markets during this period will be significant, with pricing and production strategies thrown into disarray. For the Middle East, the era of easy wealth is coming to an end. In its place rises a new era of adaptation, where survival depends on embracing change and looking beyond oil as the backbone of the economy. Organizational impact. Global institutions navigate the shifting economic landscape. International Monetary Fund, IMF, managing the crisis of economic instability. As economic disruptions ripple across the globe, the International Monetary Fund, IMF, will find itself at the heart of managing these crises. Uranus retrograde in Taurus pushes regions like Latin America and the Middle East to the brink of financial instability, with sudden shifts in resource availability triggering potential collapses in trade and economic structures. The IMF's role will be to guide these nations through turbulent times, offering support for economic restructuring and encouraging policies that prioritize sustainable resource management. Financial crises will demand swift responses, and the IMF's influence will be critical in ensuring nations do not falter in the face of instability. Expect the IMF to lead discussions on how to create more resilient economies, ones that can withstand the unpredictable nature of modern global markets, where natural resources no longer guarantee security. World Trade Organization, WTO, mediating the storm of global trade disruptions. With Uranus in Taurus retrograde, the World Trade Organization, WTO, will face a significant challenge in maintaining stability across global trade networks. Agriculture and natural resources, the lifeblood of many economies, will be subject to sudden changes in availability, tariffs, and trade agreements. The WTO will need to step in as mediator, ensuring that nations can weather these shifts without succumbing to economic isolationism or protectionism. Expect tense negotiations as countries grapple with new realities, whether it's Latin America trying to diversify its exports or the Middle East navigating the decline of oil's dominance. The WTO's ability to keep trade flowing amid these disruptions will be critical to maintaining global economic stability. Neptune retrograde in Pisces, a deep reflection on ideals, spirituality, and collective dreams. In the silent depths of 27-degree Pisces, Neptune's retrograde stirs a profound period of introspection. As the ruler of dreams, illusions, and spirituality, Neptune governs the highest ideals of compassion and transcendence. But in its retrograde motion, the illusion fades, revealing cracks in those lofty aspirations. The ethereal world of Pisces, where Neptune feels most at home, is a realm of dreams, but as this planet retraces its steps, societies are called to reflect on how far their ideals have strayed from reality. This is a time when collective visions and humanitarian efforts are tested. Disillusionment lingers in the air as the gap between what was promised and what is possible becomes painfully clear. Societies, organizations, and individuals alike must now confront the places where idealism has become ungrounded or where spiritual aspirations have drifted into deception. For those clinging to illusions, Neptune's retrograde promises to unveil uncomfortable truths. Neptune, in the 11th house, cracks in the collective vision. As Neptune takes its place in the 11th house of the ingress chart, the spotlight falls on societal groups, public organizations, and the ideals that guide them. The 11th house, governing social movements and dreams for a better future, is now subject to Neptune's introspective gaze. The grand visions that once inspired change may now be exposed as unrealistic or even deceptive. Societies around the world will face an awakening, a confrontation with the illusions that have clouded collective goals and humanitarian efforts. The dissolution of grand ideals. Public organizations and social movements, once symbols of hope and progress, may now find themselves in crisis. Hidden truths, once buried under layers of idealism, will rise to the surface, forcing a reckoning. Movements born from dreams of social justice, humanitarian causes, or spiritual growth may falter as they are forced to reevaluate their direction and purpose. The ideals that once propelled them forward now seem distant, and the road ahead is fraught with the need for realism and transparency. Global impact, societal ideals, and public organizations under the microscope. United States, social movements face disillusionment. In the United States, Neptune retrograde in the 11th house casts a shadow over social movements and public organizations. Ideals surrounding humanitarianism, political activism, and social justice, so long the foundation of many movements, now come under intense scrutiny. The disillusionment that follows exposes the widening gap between vision and outcome. Activists may find themselves grappling with internal crises as issues like mismanagement, lack of focus, or ethical concerns come to light. Public organizations and nonprofits, once trusted, may be thrust into the spotlight as calls for transparency grow louder. In this period, promises made by these groups may fall short, leaving the public to question the very ideals they once championed. Europe, a crisis of trust in political ideals. Across Europe, from the avenues of Paris to the corridors of Berlin, disillusionment simmers. Political ideals that once shaped the continent's vision for the future, social welfare, immigration, climate action, now face hard scrutiny. Neptune's retrograde reveals inconsistencies, highlighting the tension between idealism and practicality. In countries like France, Germany, and Italy, citizens may begin to lose faith in the lofty promises made by their governments and public institutions. The European Union, with its grand vision of unity and progress, may face internal pressure to address the growing disconnect between ideals and reality. Public organizations will be pushed to realign their policies with more practical, transparent goals, or risk losing the trust of the very people they serve. Middle East, spiritual ideals and humanitarian crises exposed. In the Middle East, Neptune's retrograde brings a powerful reflection on spiritual ideals and humanitarian efforts. Nations like Iran and Saudi Arabia, where spiritual authority often intertwines with political power, will be forced to confront the realities behind their public policies. This period may reveal uncomfortable truths about the role of spiritual leadership in governance. Humanitarian organizations, especially those working in conflict zones, may face similar reckonings. Despite their best efforts, many may realize that the goals they set for themselves are simply unattainable, given the current circumstances. As hidden inefficiencies or even corruption come to light, these organizations will be forced to reassess their strategies. For those working on the front lines of humanitarian crises, the weight of disillusionment will be heavy, yet necessary for growth. Organizational impact, transparency, and realignment in global institutions. United Nations, facing the limits of global humanitarianism. The United Nations, long regarded as a beacon of global humanitarianism, will find itself at a crossroads during Neptune's retrograde. The cracks in its vision of collective aid and global cooperation may become all too apparent. Hidden issues, mismanagement, inefficiencies, or a lack of transparency could surface, shaking public trust in the organization's ability to achieve its lofty goals. Reform will be the watchword, as the UN and other humanitarian groups are pushed to align their actions with practical realities. Gone will be the days of sweeping idealistic visions. The world will demand accountability and concrete results. For the UN, this is a time of reckoning, a time to prove that it can lead with both heart and pragmatism. World Health Organization, the battle for public trust in global health. For the World Health Organization, WHO, Neptune's retrograde in Pisces presents a challenge to its credibility. In the wake of global health crises, the public's confidence in the organization's ability to navigate these challenges may falter. Neptune's influence could reveal inefficiencies or murky practices within the WHO's response strategies, leading to widespread disillusionment. The WHO will need to act swiftly to regain trust, with a focus on transparency and more grounded, realistic approaches to global health. In a world that increasingly demands clear, effective leadership, the WHO will have to shift its strategies, placing public trust and accountability at the forefront of its mission. Pluto retrograde in Capricorn, the final reckoning of power and structure. The clock is ticking for Pluto's monumental journey through Capricorn as it lingers at 29 Greece, marking the final stage of its transformative reign that began in 2008. Pluto, the planet synonymous with deep, relentless change, is now on a mission to dismantle or radically reshape the most entrenched systems of authority, governance, and corporate power. With every retrograde motion, Pluto's energy turns inward, forcing societies to confront the shadows lurking within their institutions. As Pluto nears the end of its time in Capricorn, a storm of power struggles, corruption revelations, and systemic failures looms on the horizon. What has been hidden for years now rises to the surface, demanding transformation. The world braces for a dramatic shift, where long-standing institutions, whether government bodies, corporations, or global organizations, will either adapt or crumble. Pluto in the ninth house, a global overhaul of institutions and belief systems. Positioned in the ninth house, Pluto's energy takes aim at the global stage, targeting the very structures that define international law, education, and belief systems. The ninth house governs higher learning, religious institutions, philosophical frameworks, and global governance. With Pluto retrograde here, the changes will be profound, sweeping through universities, courtrooms, and diplomatic halls, leaving no stone unturned. As global institutions face pressure to evolve, this period may bring radical legal reforms and a reevaluation of global governance. Nations will grapple with questions of justice, international cooperation, and the power embedded within their belief systems. From legal doctrines to political ideologies, societies will confront their deepest held convictions and the power dynamics that fuel them. Global impact, governance, and institutions face a reckoning. European Union, economic upheaval, and the restructuring of financial systems. Across the European Union, from the bustling markets of Germany to the financial hubs of France and Italy, Pluto's retrograde signals a time of economic turbulence. The old systems, built on the backbone of traditional financial structures, begin to strain under the weight of modern demands. The final degrees of Pluto's journey through Capricorn represent the last stand for outdated economic models. Expect reforms to banking systems, corporate governance, and tax policies as governments are forced to respond to mounting pressure from technological advancements and the volatile markets stirred by Uranus in Taurus. The conversation will turn to wealth inequality, resource distribution, and the sustainability of Europe's financial future. This is a moment where the very essence of the EU's economic stability will be tested, and how Europe adapts may determine its place in the global order. United States, corporate accountability and government reform in the spotlight. In the United States, the influence of Pluto retrograde in Capricorn takes on a particularly intense tone. The final degrees of Pluto's journey will bring unresolved power struggles between the government and large corporations to a head. The nation's political and economic landscape, long shaped by corporate influence and wealth inequality, will be forced to face its demons. Revelations of corruption, corporate manipulation, and political malfeasance may surface, triggering public outcry for reform. The American people will demand accountability from their leaders and corporations alike. This retrograde period will mark a crucial point in the redefinition of power within the U.S., whether it's reshaping how corporations influence politics or addressing the systemic flaws in governmental authority. China, legal and educational reforms on the horizon. As Pluto retrograde occupies the 9th house in China's chart, the nation is poised for significant reforms in both its legal and educational systems. China, a rising global power, will be compelled to adapt to the rapidly changing international landscape. Pluto's energy will push for transformation in how China engages with global law, international partnerships, and higher education. The Chinese government may implement sweeping reforms, restructuring its legal approach to meet international standards, or revamping its education system to better prepare its citizens for the global stage. With Pluto guiding these changes, China's role in the world order will evolve, signaling its continued ascension in global affairs. Organizational impact, global institutions in the crosshairs, IMF and World Bank, economic reforms, and the call for global accountability. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, and World Bank, pillars of global economic governance, will not escape Pluto's transformative energy. With economic volatility on the rise and demands for greater transparency growing louder, these institutions will be forced to reassess their financial models. Pluto's retrograde motion will intensify calls for debt relief, wealth redistribution, and a more equitable approach to global financial power. As economic inequality and resource scarcity push the world to the brink, the IMF and World Bank will need to lead the charge in developing innovative solutions. Expect these institutions to be scrutinized for their role in perpetuating or mitigating global financial crises. The pressure to reform will be immense, and how they respond will define the future of global economics. United Nations and international courts, a restructuring of global justice. Under Pluto's transformative influence in the 9th house, the United Nations and international courts are set to face a reckoning. The UN, long tasked with maintaining peace and international cooperation, may find itself at a crossroads. Issues of global justice, peacekeeping efforts, and international law will come under intense scrutiny. Pluto will expose inefficiencies and outdated frameworks within these institutions, forcing a restructuring of their roles in maintaining global order. Power imbalances within international courts, legal standards, and peacekeeping operations will need to be addressed. This period marks the beginning of a new era in global governance, one where transparency, justice, and cooperation take center stage. Moon trine Saturn, a moment of emotional stability and groundbreaking reforms. As the moon in Cancer forms a harmonious trine with Saturn in Pisces on October 22, 2024, the stars align to bring a rare moment of emotional calm and practical change. These celestial bodies, both in intuitive water signs, create an atmosphere where emotional security and responsible governance can flow together, casting a stabilizing influence across the globe. The moon's nurturing energy in Cancer, a sign that evokes images of family, home, and protection, meets Saturn's disciplined, compassionate focus in Pisces, encouraging leaders to address the emotional needs of their populations with concrete structured solutions. The moon's pull toward emotional well-being is heightened, and Saturn's steady hand promises long-term reforms that aren't fleeting but designed to endure. This powerful alignment suggests that governments, institutions, and public organizations may seize this opportunity to enact meaningful reforms in areas like healthcare, social welfare, and family policies. The world is on the cusp of reforms that could touch the deepest layers of society, supporting not only material security, but also the emotional health of communities. A global shift: how Moon trine Saturn impacts nations and policies. United States, reforming healthcare and family policies for a stable future. In the United States, the Moon's trine to Saturn is likely to usher in reforms that touch the heart of healthcare and family dynamics. Picture a country finally addressing the mental health crisis with the gravity it deserves. Leaders may implement sustainable programs to support healthcare workers, expand access to mental health services, and prioritize maternal care. These changes could ripple across family support systems, with new policies designed to provide long-term security for families and children, building a future where emotional needs are met with practical solutions. The government may introduce comprehensive public welfare initiatives, offering deeper support for families struggling with the cost of care. With Saturn's disciplined energy in Pisces, these changes will be built to last, providing a sturdy foundation for generations to come. Imagine a national focus on mental health access, where families finally feel supported and caregivers are equipped with the resources they need. European Union, strengthening social welfare and healthcare systems. Across Europe, the trine between the Moon and Saturn brings the spotlight to social welfare and healthcare reforms, particularly in countries like Germany, France, and the Nordic nations, renowned for their progressive social policies. Governments may seize this moment to strengthen family support services, enhancing public healthcare systems, and expanding social safety nets. Visualize renewed efforts to support caregivers, child welfare policies that ensure long-term security for the young, and initiatives to bolster elderly care. The emotionally attuned Moon in Cancer drives a focus on nurturing, while Saturn's influence ensures that these reforms are not just immediate fixes, but enduring solutions. With Europe at the forefront of balancing emotional well-being with practical resource management, these policies could set a new global standard for how nations care for their most vulnerable populations. Asia, family-oriented reforms take center stage. In Asia, the Moon-Saturn trine is poised to inspire family-oriented policies and welfare reforms, particularly in countries like Japan and South Korea, where aging populations and work-life balance are pressing issues. Imagine a shift in focus toward improving family support structures, creating policies that balance the pressures of modern life with the emotional needs of the population. Governments may introduce reforms aimed at reducing the strain on families, including more accessible healthcare, expanded parental leave, and policies that promote work-life balance. With Saturn in Pisces ensuring that these efforts are grounded in practicality, these nations could create systems that not only secure financial stability, but also cultivate emotional resilience among their citizens. Global organizations, a call for long-term reforms. World Health Organization, a focus on sustainable healthcare. The World Health Organization, WHO, is likely to channel the stabilizing energy of this trine into promoting healthcare reforms that prioritize mental health, maternal care, and family support. As the Moon encourages emotional care and Saturn demands structure, the WHO may advocate for sustainable healthcare models that address both the physical and emotional well-being of populations worldwide. Picture a global effort where healthcare systems evolve to meet the needs of the whole person, mind, body, and spirit. With Saturn's influence in Pisces, these reforms will not be superficial, but deeply rooted in practicality, ensuring that healthcare systems can meet the growing challenges of the modern world. Mental health, often sidelined, could move to the forefront, with long-term strategies that focus on compassionate care. United Nations and UNICEF, advocating for children and families. For organizations like UNICEF and the United Nations, this trine offers the perfect moment to push for family-centered welfare programs and child protection policies. Under this influence, expect a global focus on providing emotional security for the most vulnerable, children and families in conflict zones or impoverished regions. Imagine the United Nations spearheading efforts to implement child protection reforms, ensuring that the most vulnerable are given not just material security, but the emotional care they deserve. The moon's nurturing energy, paired with Saturn's focus on discipline and compassion, could drive real change in how governments and organizations approach the protection of children and families. Expect practical support from governments, allowing for long-lasting reforms that safeguard emotional well-being alongside material needs. Sun square Pluto, a collision of power and transformation. As the Sun in Scorpio clashes with Pluto in Capricorn on October 22, 2024, the cosmic tension between these two heavyweights ignites a dramatic battle for dominance. The Sun, symbolizing leadership, ego, and public identity, confronts Pluto, the ruler of power, transformation, and authority. Their square aspect is not a subtle push, it's a seismic event, shaking the very foundations of entrenched power structures. Like tectonic plates grinding beneath the surface, this aspect signals the potential for explosive conflict, forcing a reckoning with old systems that no longer serve the collective. This celestial standoff between the Sun's desire for recognition and Pluto's demand for deep systemic change echoes across governments, corporations, and institutions worldwide. With Pluto lurking in the shadows, demanding transparency, and Scorpio's Sun casting an unflinching spotlight on corruption and control, this moment is ripe for upheaval. Leaderships are forced into a corner, either adapt or be dismantled by forces beyond their control. The Sun square Pluto aspect thrusts government into an intense struggle for control, with political factions clashing for survival. Hidden agendas rise to the surface, and power struggles intensify as leaders face challenges that could redefine their future. Expect revelations of corruption and calls for significant governance reforms as citizens demand hidden truths be brought to light. Across the European Union, leaders face high-stakes scrutiny, with conflicts that are both political and personal. The Sun's energy pushes for exposure, while Pluto demands transformation, leading to potential policy reforms. In Russia, hidden power struggles brew beneath the Kremlin, with potential leadership changes on the horizon. In China, deep-rooted power dynamics demand transformation, challenging the government's grip on authority. The IMF and World Bank face internal power struggles, with growing pressure for reform in global financial power distribution. The United Nations Security Council faces profound internal conflict, exposing long-standing power imbalances among member nations. As the world watches, leaders must confront the need for reform or remain trapped in outdated structures.